What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Friday show again. Couple of unplanned days off the last couple days. Usual Thursday short getaway day, 1:10 p.m. start yesterday, so we didn't pop up a show early for that little four-gamer. Day before, a little bit of technical difficulties in the spreadsheet, and I didn't want to be here trying to fix things that popped up as we found them while we were on the air talking about everything, so just kind of punted that one, but hopefully you guys out there had some good days. Looked like Lone Wolf took down another one. Saw a nice little, I think it was a fourth place finish that he dropped in the chat. Then we had El Gru, took down a nice one yesterday, about $1,000. $1,086.75. Looked like he took first in a $33 single entry? A $33 thousand of first place anyway. So congrats to you guys over the last couple of days. We have the worst, stupidest, ugliest, most terrible looking slate lined up for tonight. Reason being, it's more of it's going to impact the show and how smoothly this goes than it is actually like a bad looking slate. Reason being, with a bunch of games starting at 6:35, 6:40, whatever it is, I believe 6:40, FanDuel went the route that I was congratulating both sites on deciding not to go the other day. They're going with a 13-game 6:40 start time, while DraftKings is an 8-game 7:05 start time. So it's going to be really annoying to talk about these different things. Give me a quick read in the chat if you guys would. Do you want to start just at the top? Go through as fast as possible the 5 FanDuel games, and DraftKings folks can just hang out and listen to things. And if you're playing that early slate on DK that doesn't have any good tournaments in it, then you can obviously take some some thoughts from that. Or do you want to try, and it's going to get ugly, try and start in the middle where the DraftKings slate comes in at like the 7 o'clock games, go through those 8 games, and then loop back around and do the FanDuel games at the end of the show? What would you guys prefer? Just let me know. We've got Lone Wolf's in the chat. Cujo Blues here. Trey is here. 8-game. Pig hand wave to you too, buddy. Monty Pritchett. Thank you, pal. Welcome back to you too. Shauno's here. Monty's the only one so far that wants to do the first, the 8-gamer first. It looks like everybody else is just saying, let's go through. Shauno's here for the full ride. He works until 10:30. Lone Wolf's playing the 8-game slate. All right. Sorry, Monty. Limited sampling here, but you're polling behind, and we're not ones to. We don't have the time to let the remote precincts check in and tally their votes. So I think we're just going to go from the start and dive on in here. So let's get the Vegas board up. First game on deck, and apologies, guys, we're going to do a lot of talking, and we're going to do, I will try and get into chat and get questions answered, but there's a lot to go through here, and we're just going to kind of dive on in. So, Nats and the Phils up top, 3.45 implied total for the Nationals going up against Aaron Nola. Looks like a pretty solid option up near the top of the FanDuel slate. On the other side, Phillies, big target for FanDuel gamers for that early DK slate as well, a 5.68 implied total, showing a lot of potential thunder against Patrick Corbin, one of our favorite targets for, the better half of the last 5 years or so. Kansas City against Cincinnati in Cincinnati, solid 9.5 run total for that game. It's Nick Martinez, it's Michael Lorenzen, 2 targetable pitchers on the mound there in terms of rostering bats against. 4.5 run total for KC against Martinez, and then a 5.10 for the hometown Reds against Lorenzen. So definitely another spot to consider for some key bats. Paul Skeens on the FanDuel slate, not available on your DK slate on the main, but definitely going to be the top arm in that short slate to start in the 6 o'clock hour. Top of the board on FanDuel, easy target against the high strikeout Mariners. We've been targeting the Mariners since opening day, and no reason not to continue with the best pitcher in baseball. Logan Gilbert on the other side of that one. He's got the Pirates checked down to 3.63 implied runs. He's also very good, just a 7-run total for the game. Seems like a good spot to draw pitching. No real need to go to the Mariners, no real need to go to the Pirates. Yankees looking pretty solid against Brent Herter, whoever the hell he is. He's made two outings, a 5-inning outing and a 3-inning outing, both in bulk relief. was moderately effective, gave up 3 earned runs to San Francisco, none to KC in the 3-inning game. But the Yanks are drawing a lot of upside against him. They're heavily favored in the game, but overall just an 8-run total because Garrett Cole is on the mound. 3.44 implied total going in the direction of the Tigers. 4.65 for the Yankees. Diamondbacks and the Rays dead even on the board in Vegas. It's Ryan Pepio, it's Ryan Nelson, a battle between two guys, one of whose parents knew how to spell the name Ryan and the other whose did not. Both guys, reasonable for what the money looks like. Pepio, the better of the two pitchers right now, but Nelson hit that little bit of an uptick, and his most recent outing was good. Another good one against the Phillies when we were talking about him the other day, saying maybe, but not a great spot to try and find out with him whether this is real or not. 2 earned runs, went 7 1/3 in that one, struck out 9. Pretty great game out of Ryan Nelson. So I think we can maybe extract some pitching from that Arizona-Tampa Bay game. Kind of interesting one there. Red Sox and the Orioles, your first game up on the DraftKings slate. 8.5 runs there. Battle between two very good AL East teams. 3.72 implied total for Boston. They're getting Tristan Casas back tonight, so a more complete version of their lineup. They're just going up against Corbin Burns, so it kind of sucks to have that happen on daylight today. 3.72 implied total. It's one of the more playable sub-4 totals. But we've got so many totals to work with on this slate overall, and they're going up against one of the very best pitchers in baseball. And then it's Cooper Criswell in bulk relief. I think it was Brennan Bernardino I saw was going to open, but it's probably going to be like 3 innings of Cooper Criswell in bulk relief behind an inning and change of Brennan Bernardino. So difficult to land on the Red Sox pitching, but I went with Cooper Criswell for how we're modeling it because he'll probably get the bulk of the innings. 4.88 implied total going in Baltimore's direction. They're looking pretty good. Marlins, Mets, Sean Manaea going for the Mets, looking to shut down the completely inept Miami Marlins, who are at a 3.37. Manaea, pretty high-end pitcher, can run into some short starts, can run into some bad games from time to time, but this is a cakewalk of a matchup, and he's got a lot of support from his team, drawing a 5.25 implied total against the Rodere Munoz. I noted as I was putting the sheet together, the projections and everything for the website, the price on Mark Vientos on DraftKings today is just stupid. It is just completely brain dead. I'm not sure where everybody else is pricing, at that position, and throughout the entire slate came down. We'll look at it. But, man, that's one that's just been, we've had our eye on throughout the season, really, since he locked down that starting role. And it's gone down. It's legitimately gone down from where it was just the other day. So it's one to note for sure. The Twins and the Rangers, Simeon Wood Richardson on the mound for the Twins, and Andrew Heaney, another of our lefty targets, on the mound for the Rangers. He's having a better season overall, most certainly than Patrick Corbin. He hasn't exactly been good, and he's definitely run into some bumpy spots, but he hasn't been quite as targetable. He hasn't been quite as bad as in some seasons for home runs and for power against. So a little bit more limited enthusiasm for the target, but a very good team to throw at him with the Twins in town. 4.19 implied total for them. Wouldn't surprise me if they were one of the top 2 teams on the slate. 4.40 implied total for Texas. Woods Richardson is good enough to get through that Texas team. Last time out he faced Cleveland. He struck out 7 over 7 innings, gave up just 2 earned runs. So he's capable of snapping off some pretty good starts. Definitely worth considering from the middle of the board, but a 4.40 total for an improved Texas lineup on the other side, not exactly encouraging. The Guardians, 4.33 implied total for them, facing Aaron Savali for the Brewers. Gavin Williams on the mound for Cleveland, going up against the Brew Crew. Pretty even totals in the mid-4s there. Probably a 4-corner spot. I think I would roll some Savali. I would roll some Gavin Williams on both sides of that, but I would play bats against both of those pitchers as well. So that one looks like a decidedly middle-of-the-board 4-corners game across the board. White Sox and the Astros, a lot less so. The White Sox going up against Spencer Arrighetti, who has just been on an absolute tear. 13 strikeouts in his most recent game and 12 strikeouts the game before that. So two pretty dominant outings, and now he gets to face the White Sox. So naturally, if you speak baseball, that means the White Sox are scoring 13 runs, and he's having a 5-walk, 2-strikeout game tonight. But looks like a pretty good option for a fair price against the worst team in baseball. And then his team supporting him pretty well with a 4.74 implied total on their side of things. They're going up against Garrett Crochet, but it's really like the memory of Garrett Crochet's beginning of the year at this point. Last time out, just 2 1/3, gave up 7 earned runs. In addition to having these shortened outings and shortened expectations for the depth to which he's going to pitch, and I, again, just put him in at like 75 pitches, he's just not been as good. He has legitimately hit a downturn toward the end of the season here. And we're talking about a guy who a month ago was already over his career innings, or double his career innings. I think was the case. So Houston looks pretty playable. If Crochet comes in and he's dealing like the guy that we saw all through mid-July, then the Astros could be a problem. But they're not going to face him for more than, say, 4 innings. So even with that, you've got a little juice there. It's just if he does go in and shut them down for those 4 innings, you're taking the top off of that big total. So it might be a day where they're more like we're going to score between 4 and 6 runs like the total implies, but we might not have a huge ceiling if Crochet is on form. So a little bit of an asterisk on the Astros stack. Dodgers, Cards, 5.12 implied total for Los Angeles, one of the top-ranked teams on the board going up against Miles Michaelis. And then the Cardinals, not looking terrible, 4.48 implied total in the middle of the slate, facing Justin Robleski. Cal Quantrill on the mound facing Matt Waldron in, yes, we've got a Coors Field game on this slate, just to make it even more interesting. 11.5 runs to top the slate by a full 2 runs, 6.51 of it going to the Padres. They definitely look appealing up against a gettable pitcher like Cal Quantrill, and it doubles it because their extreme high contact and low strikeout nature in that Padres lineup, and then Quantrill himself being extreme low strikeout, high contact. Those two things go together extremely well in Coors Field. 5.13 implied total for the Rocks against Waldron. If I'm not mistaken, he had a successful start back on, April 24th, if you guys remember this one. Going into Colorado that day, and I remember it because I was talking about it. I was saying I was really, really curious to see what impact it had on the knuckler, and I thought it might be, leading him into disaster. Went 6 innings in that one. He struck out 5. He gave up 1 earned on 4 hits, walked 3. Gave up the earned run came on a solo home run. But that's an effective Coors Field start, and he's been pretty decent all season. Feels like a little bit of a high Coors Field, kind of an inflated total for the Rockies side of things, and maybe we could get away with some Matt Waldron. We'll see where he's priced. Then to wrap things up with the Braves and the Angels, Spencer Schwellenbach looks pretty good against the Angels. He's got them at 3.62. Very high-end young pitcher, pitching well and on a nice roll. 28 strikeouts over his last 3 starts. At least 6 innings in 6 straight starts, excuse me. Only one of those was not a quality start, and only because he gave up 4 earned in that game. Very good pitcher facing a very gettable Angels team at the end of the night, and then a 4.46 implied total for the Braves in support of them. They're facing Jose Soriano. And here's what your ugly pitching board looks like. If you're looking at this, or if you're looking at the top stacks board on the website, I apologize, but nothing I can do about it. I didn't break up the slates this way. Paul Skeens, top your FanDuel board at 45. Well worth paying for if you can figure out what works to put that together. And at least you've got 26 teams to choose between as far as your stacks. So seems like a day that you could probably reach that 11-2 if you want it. It's an ideal opponent. Maybe the only better opponent is the White Sox. But we've seen pitchers that are way worse than Paul Skeens succeed against this Mariners team in big, big ways this season. Skeens himself, I don't want to say he has hit like any kind of a wall or anything like that, but he has been a little bit more vulnerable for earned runs. That was against the Dodgers in the most recent one in his first start at Los Angeles. He did strike out 8, but he gave up 6 hits. He only walked 1. Not a terrible game, but not completely elite. Gave up 2 earned runs to Arizona in 5 1/3 the start before that. Just 1 but 2 runs allowed on 5 hits to Houston the start before that. So when I say he's been a little bit more vulnerable, it just means he's given up, a couple of runs recently. It does nothing really to damage the upside, especially against a high strikeout team like Seattle. Garrett Cole, number 2 on your FanDuel slate. Monster discount at $9,800. Still expensive, but that's a little bit cheap for Garrett Cole against the Tigers to begin with, just in a price vacuum. And by comparison to Paul Skeens at the top, to Logan Gilbert a couple spots down, even Corbin Burns at $10,000. Definitely a lot of appeal in Garrett Cole there. Sean Manaea facing the Marlins. Tremendous matchup. $9,300 on FanDuel, $8,700 on DraftKings. Tons and tons of appeal on the DK slate at $8,700. That is a cheap SP1 with slate winning upside. And you could probably viably put him together. Crochet's at 93 on DraftKings. This is a mistake. Don't play this. That's not the right price. He should be like 75. 82, somewhere in that territory. Weird one. This would be an interesting combo. Manaea, Arrighetti. It's probably going to be pretty popular. But 87, 85 for those two pitchers against those two teams, that works. I like that a lot. Even if it's popular, I don't mind doing it because you've got enough options, even with only 8 games on DK. You've got enough options to mix your bats up, and there's enough ways to do it over there. Logan Gilbert back to FanDuel only at 10-5. Very, very talented pitcher. Benefits from the matchup against the Pirates for sure. They're better than the Mariners are in terms of the man-for-man bats, but it definitely dwindles toward the bottom of that lineup, and Logan Gilbert is a tremendous pitcher. Aaron Nola against the Nationals. Pretty solid matchup for him. The Nats are a little bit low strikeout. They can get you from time to time with their base hit nature, but Nola's very, very good, and 34.28, highly playable at 96. Slight discount by 200 from Garrett Cole. Corbin Burns at 10,097 on the DraftKings slate. Believably one of the higher-end pitchers overall on the slate. Just a difficult matchup against the Red Sox. I'd rather have basically any of those guys as far as the matchup goes. Rather have Arrighetti and Schwellenbach as far as the matchups go between two guys that are on the DK slates. So Burns more than talented enough and elite enough to put up even a dominant game against a team as good as the Red Sox. But out of that entire group of pitchers up at the top, he's easily the most threatened. Arrighetti's a tremendous option against the White Sox. Even if he hadn't been on that little roll over the last couple of starts, I would be saying this. Really like the option there. The other Spencer, a couple of Spencers with long multisyllabic last names. Spencer Arrighetti, Spencer Schwellenbach. Both of those guys, tremendous. 97, 98 for Schwelly. Easy option at the end of the night. I kind of like it as a late night hammer. If I can get it, I'll take Paul Skeens on FanDuel at 11-2. If I can get it, I'll take Garrett Cole. I might end up on Manaea if I need a little savings. But if I come up 100 short on Garrett Cole, that's an easy pivot for me to go to Spencer Schwellenbach at 97. It would depend because obviously you've got some options that are a little bit even cheaper than that. So it depends on what I need to reach bats-wise. But that entire group up top is appealing, and he's definitely a part of it. Pepio against Arizona, 8,200 on FanDuel. Pretty appealing there. Arizona, not the easiest matchup in the world, but Pepio is a talented pitcher for the money. That's not a bad alternative if you're not going to the top of the pitching board as far as price goes. Dropping right there. Crochet, again, he would be off the board for me at 85 on FanDuel. I don't think you're getting anywhere near the pitch count, and the Astros aren't a good opponent anyway. 93 is just a broken price on DraftKings, so you're down another pitcher on DK. Ryan Nelson has been pitching very well, faces a very, very vulnerable Tampa Bay team for just 8,300 on the FanDuel slate. Might fall by the wayside. I still don't know how much buzz he's really getting for the recent performances, so that looks like a pretty decent spot against a very high strikeout Tampa team. Gavin Williams is a good pitcher, just a bad matchup against the Brewers, but at 6,600, I absolutely love that as an SP2 on your DraftKings board. I would play Gavin Williams for 8,000 on a shorter slate on FanDuel. Let's say this was a 8-gamer, same slate as on DK tonight, and he came in at that price. I'd be kind of interested. Today, there's just so many other options at every price tier that it probably don't target the Brewers, but Gavin Williams is a very high-end young pitcher. Before the injury derailed him a little bit, he was one of the premium young pitching prospects in all of baseball. He was top 20 overall prospect, I think, somewhere in that territory. Guardians' top overall prospect. Woods Richardson, again, successful enough and demonstrable success throughout the year and talented enough to beat that Rangers team. 8,100, it's almost exactly the same thing as with Gavin Williams. It's just a deep slate on the FanDuel side, but 6,900, that's a second very appealing bargain bin SP2. I wouldn't call you crazy if you just went 6,900, 6,600 with a few shares. This is more of a, if you're building a bunch of lineups approach on DraftKings. But if you wanted to bundle those two guys together and just get to some crazy high-priced bats in a lineup, they're both capable of producing SP1 starts in those spots. It's not the safest play in the world, but on a much more limited pitching slate, I have no issues taking the discount, putting those two guys together. You could include Savali on the other side of that. It's just a lower strikeout pitcher against a lower strikeout team. He's not as appealing as these two guys are. There's upside here. That's interesting. If that buys you crazy bats, I'd be intrigued. Heaney's the same thing as those guys on FanDuel as far as how his price fits in the matchup against Minnesota. I'd just rather not. And 7,400 on the DK slate. He's on the board there, but it's not as good a price as those two above him. Jose Soriano against the Braves. They are high strikeout, 87, 84 across sites. You get a little bit out of Soriano maybe at the end of the night, but it's just, another one that falls by the wayside. Price-wise on FanDuel, 84 is a bit tough to reach on DraftKings as well. Savali, again, the Guardians just pretty low strikeout. Savali comes and goes as far as the output this year, capable of having a good game in that spot. Waldron is pitching in Coors Field. That's really the only downside. Good matchup, talented pitcher, and we saw the Knuckler dance a little bit in Coors Field the last time out back at the beginning of the year, so not off the board at 78. 86 on FanDuel doesn't really fit as far as this slate looks. 8,400 for Nick Martinez is kind of a no on the FanDuel board against Kansas City. Roderick Munoz against the Mets, pretty tough at 69-66. Fortunately, I think you just go to Gavin Williams for your 66, and you're fine there. If you need it as an offset for price, it's still pretty ugly. I would probably still just look in other directions on DK. Herder against the Yankees is a no. Lorenzen against the Reds in that ballpark is a no on FanDuel. Justin Robleski, 65 on DraftKings. Probably not. Miles Michaelis against the Dodgers, probably not. Patrick Corbin against the Phillies, no. Cal Quantrill against the Padres at Coors Field, no. Cooper Criswell, not enough innings. It's a really ugly DraftKings slate in terms of the pitching. You're fortunate to have those two options, so you can use those two guys, maybe throw Heaney into that mix, maybe throw Savali into that mix, maybe even throw Waldron, but that's at yet another price jump. But I think you're getting your value SP2 plays from there rather than anybody below that on the DraftKings slate. So the obvious approach is to grab one of these guys and pair him with one of those guys. I think the less obvious approach would be to go Manaea Arrighetti and figure out what you can do for value bats, or go like Woods Richardson, and Gav for the cheap combo. Obviously, when you're building out 150 lineups, you're going to have the vast majority of them are going to be one of these value guys and one of these guys. But I think you do probably benefit from setting aside some lineups and saying, all right, in this set of lineups, I'm not going to let this group of guys be paired with that group of guys. I'll allow pairings within this group, and I'll allow pairings within that group. Or like you offset certain crunches to be able to do that. But it's a really interesting, just broken pitching slate on the DraftKings side. On FanDuel, it's a lot deeper, and you can go in any direction that you want, and a lot of these plays are just erased by the value that you can find up there. All right, diving in, we're going to be doing a lot of clicking back and forth, looking for lineups and shit as this thing goes on. Nationals doesn't look like it's come out yet. All right, FanDuel only. Patty Corbin is a no. Just a target for Phillies bats. You can see the numbers that are coming up here on the Phillies at the top of the slate, at the top of the lineup rather, and then you've got some very good options going down lineup that are drawing some, very solid mid-board type of home run numbers. JT Realmuto at 6.76, Weston Wilson at 6.68 after his cycle last night. Fills 3 positions for just 2,400. Very solid right-handed bat, drawing a 46.7% hard hit and 23.3% barrels over his first 40 plate appearances with 3 home runs on the board, going up against Patrick Corbin, who yields ridiculous premium contact. So just throw Phillies bats at Corbin. You can absolutely play Aaron Nola for 9,600. It is a nice little price offset from the very top of the slate. Nola's not pitching poorly, a 3.60 ERA, a 3.54 xFIP, but strikeouts are down at 23.1%. That is still a little bit above average, but it's not Aaron Nola. From previous seasons, he was higher into the 20s last year, 25.5, year before 29.1. That's where we're used to seeing him. So a little bit of a downturn in terms of the massive fantasy ceiling, but I think that's cooked into the $9,600 price against the Nats. 18.1% strikeout rate for this Nationals projected lineup. That does include Andres Chaparro at 0 there, so let's see. That's 20.4% if you take out the 0. Presumably at some point in his career he will strike out. So it's a little bit impactful for Nola's upside, but it puts him right around, between 1 and 4, 1 and 5 like he is anyway. So I think there's upside there. Looking at the Nationals bats, if this is at all a version of the lineup that you get, they're at least mix and match playable. They're on that board of semi-playable cheap teams. You need that less, I think, on FanDuel than you do on DraftKings today, though. Some solid mid-level home run numbers, but nobody above the magic number. 8.08 for CJ Abrams leads the team, but a couple guys in the 6s after that with Juan Yepez, James Wood, who's on a little bit of an uptick over his last handful of games. Chaparro is at 2,600 and 6.57. Luis Garcia at 6.16, 3,100 second base only. He's got 14 home runs and 19 stolen bases on the season, pulling in a 117 WRC plus for the year. It's actually the best season we've seen from Luis Garcia. So I think if you're looking to get to a cheap stack, this group of hitters is not terrible. You can throw Garcia into that mix as well. There's playability there, but at these prices, at these threes, they're not exactly completely cheap. There are more discounted teams. This just puts these guys at cheap but upper middle. Like the lower end of the upper middle class, let's say, to stretch that as far as we possibly can. Abrams has 17 homers and 22 steals with a 114 WRC plus. You get 3 home runs out of Juan Yepez, who's holding down a 294, 349, 449 over his 152 chances now. Wood came up to the show as one of the top prospects in all of baseball. Over his 165 chances, we're at 274, 358, 432, a 124 WRC plus, and monster premium contact numbers, 11.7% barrels, 57.4% hard hits. From a $3,300 outfielder, that's not terrible. But again, that's also not extremely cheap. He's not, these green level prices. A good point of comparison, like Alec Boehm with the season he's having against Patrick Corbin is only 34. So how cheap are the Nats really from among the overall appealing players? 11 home runs on the year at Keibert Ruiz with a lot of contact, 10.3% strikeouts and 3.1% walks. He's just not making very hard contact, but a lot of base hit caliber contact with the ability to hit the occasional home run. He's got 11 this year. He hit 17, 18 last year, 136 ISO and a 72 WRC plus though. Just looking for cheap contact out of him, but 2,700, you don't have to play catchers on FanDuel. Doesn't really have that much appeal. Alex Call having a decent 85 plate appearances so far. 1 home run and 4 steals on the board, but a killer triple slash, 187 WRC plus. He's a mix and match caliber outfielder for 3,000 at the bottom. Jose Tena and Jacob Young. Young has 27 stolen bases with a 313 on base that's improved a little bit over the last few weeks. 392 reasonably good plate appearances out of him, but an 82 WRC plus. You can see what the consistency and the actual contributions look like. He's really just here to steal the occasional base from the bottom of the lineup. Mix and match outfielder to wrap around. Phillies bats, the top 3 are super obvious. Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, and Trey Turner. If you're building Philly stacks and you can get those 3 guys into your lineup, you're putting those 3 guys into your lineup. Monster home run numbers out of Harper and Schwarber, despite being lefties against Patrick Corbin, it just doesn't matter. Between these 2 hitters, it doesn't really matter, and then facing Patrick Corbin, it definitely doesn't matter. 236 ISO with 28 home runs for Schwarbs, 259 with 26 on the board for Harper. Trey Turner in between those 2 hitters with a monster slash line, a 127 WRC plus, 13 homers and 14 stolen bases, 18.8% strikeouts, a tremendous shortstop option. And honestly, at 37, offset in price a little bit from some of the other premium shortstops. Boehm at 34 at both corner infield spots, 13 homers, a 186 ISO, a 130 WRC plus. Fantastic 4th man in. As far as that goes, he's just as expensive as the rest of that group, basically, but terrific option. 3,200 for Nicky Castellanos. You buy the occasional home run with Castellanos. A little bit of extra base hit power at 171 ISO, 99 WRC plus. Realmuto's a playable catcher. You can act like he's a first baseman if you want to, and just pair him with Bryce Harper. But it's not like replacing Harper with first base. So he falls down the board a little bit by comparison, site to site. Stott at 2,900, a mix and match infielder, 24 stolen bases and 8 home runs with just an 85 WRC plus on the left side. Wilson again, cycle last night, just 2,400, 3 positions, kind of interesting with a good power number and good contact so far against Corbin. That's not a bad way to offset these 3 prices. Just drop him in at second base, 2,400. That's pretty ideal, and he wraps around effectively enough to those 3. And then Johan Rojas at the bottom, just here to play defense, really. Phillies bats way above Aaron Nola, and the Nationals are after Nola, and Patrick Corbin's not really on the board. A couple of pitchers that I just wouldn't play in this game on FanDuel. If they were on the DK slate, maybe we could argue it out, but 17.9% strikeouts out of Michael Lorenzen, even up against a high strikeout Reds lineup that has a 25.2% for the confirmed lineup strikeout rate. Doesn't look appealing here. It's a high danger ballpark. It's a fairly high danger lineup against a lot of mid type home run projections. Bunch of 6s and 7s through the lineup there for the Reds. Not showing extreme power, but Lorenzen definitely gettable for power. He's just below the marks in every category. 3.66% home run rate. He's also just gettable for runs against, and he walks a ton of hitters. 11.2% walk rate. You're just getting free opportunities from him. A 3.79 ERA, but that 5.03 xFIP is definitely the more correct number. 4.18 ERA with a 4.68 xFIP last year, 4.24 and a 4.20 the year before. Similar strikeout numbers, similar power numbers. Lorenzen's totally gettable here. And then Nick Martinez, 20.4% strikeout rate over 91 innings, 7 actual starts, and then some bulk relief appearances. Last time out, he went 7 innings against the Brewers. He struck out 70. It was a one-hitter, no runs. Also gave up no runs in a start against Miami at Miami. 5 innings in that one. 5 strikeouts, 4 hits, no runs. So technically, we're on a 12-inning shutout streak here. He gave up a run in 1 inning of relief work prior to those 2 games, to those 2 starts. Had a 4-inning bulk relief outing on July 30th against the Cubs. That was also 4 innings of shutout ball. Technically, he's given up 1 earned run over his last 24 1/3. It's a pretty good little stretch. I don't think it lasts. I think throwing some Royals bats at him has some definite upside here. But it's a nice little run that he's been on. Royals check in at a 5.10, so obviously Vegas likes him to ruin that stretch, and so do I. Don't think you're going to Nick Martinez for 8,400. There's just no real strikeout appeal. He doesn't really walk anybody. 2.7% walk rate is very solid over 91 innings. 3.16 ERA with a 3.95 xFIP. But there's a lot of quality on Kansas City. 19.2% strikeout rate for the confirmed lineup. You got Mike Massey leading off again today. 10 home runs for the lefty on the year, a 2.11 ISO. Solid left-handed power bat. 6.81 in the home run model. He doesn't completely obliterate the ball like some of his teammates do, but he makes solid contact, and he makes frequent contact with that 14.9 and 3.1 in the strikeout and walk category. So he's not the best on-base option, not the best guy in terms of leading off the lineup for that, but he puts the ball in play a ton, and he hits it with authority. So he's a good way to start a DFS stack for 2,800 at second base. Bobby Witt, obvious at 4,400. That said, remember, you do have Trey Turner in the Phillies lineup for 37, whatever it was. I think it was 37. So you do have a pretty appreciable discount between Witt and Trey Turner. That said, Witt's having a just ridiculous MVP caliber kind of a season. 349, 397, 612 with a 263 ISO, 24 homers and 25 steals. Monster year. Vinny Pascantino hit the skids a little bit after I traded him and hasn't bounced back over the last few days that I've noticed. 259, 313, 444, a 104 WRC plus and 17 home runs. Still one of my favorite hitters in the league. 45.5% hard hits and 12.9% strikeouts. Those two things go together extremely well, and I still like him for a strong finish here. I think those numbers continue to climb over the end. 3,300 at first base, not a bad option. You do have to play him and Sal first base and util, so again, it's a little bit more challenging with that positional, not conflict, but that positional uniqueness with this lineup. It's one of the few teams that you kind of absolutely want to be doing that in the majority of your lineups. Those are easily 2 of the Royals' better producing DFS options. 22 home runs and a 197 ISO out of Sal on the season. He looks pretty terrific. MJ hits the ball extremely hard, 8.8% barrels, 43% hard hits. So does Paul DeJong, 9.7 and 41.3. Neither guy is the model of consistency, but MJ has 14 home runs. He's clawed his way above the Mendoza line at 203. Still just a 264 on base and an 80 WRC plus. But the 203 ISO, the big lefty power, is really all we're looking for out of MJ. 20 home runs on the year out of DeJong. Most of them came while with Chicago. 207 ISO and a 100 WRC plus on the nose for the season. A lot of strikeouts out of both of those hitters. 24.9% and 30.3% pushes up the lineup's average a little bit higher than it normally is. But both of those guys capable home run hitters. 5.70 and 6.17 in the home run model. I would probably want 1, not 2 of those guys, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just you do want some ability to some base hit ability, some consistency in terms of run creation, getting on base, etc., etc. Adam Frazier, Freddie Furman, and Kyle Isbell. Mix and match options down lineup. Freddie Furman is the best option in the bunch, but he fits in at catcher on for 2,600 on FanDuel only. 301, 350, 418, 112 WRC plus. The other two guys below average run creators. On the red side, Jonathan India, pretty good on base option, 353 on base with 11 homers and 10 stolen bases, a 108 WRC plus this year. Definitely a correlated scoring play at second base for 3,000, but he's playable. Ellie De La Cruz, 4,100 at shortstop, 21 homers, 59 stolen bases, a 230 ISO, a 127 WRC plus, having an absolutely monstrous season. 31.3% strikeouts is still high. We still need to work on that a little bit, but it's down 2 points year over year. You like it to continue improving as the player continues to grow. 13.5% barrels, 45.3% hard hits. Like I said about Victor Wembanyama all year long in basketball, continues to be true about Ellie in his first full, complete season here in the show. This is the worst we're ever going to see him. Buckle up for the future. This kid is exceptional. He is unique. Tyler Stevenson, a very high-end catcher at 2,900, but again, you don't necessarily need to occupy first base or util with a catcher today. 16 home runs, a 207 ISO. He is one of the better options for that. Definitely hits for power. 10% barrels and 44.1% hard hits. More of a, if you're playing Reds already, you can include Stevenson, than he is a, you have to go out of your way to get to the Reds because of Stevenson. That said, you could consider him this team's first baseman. It's not like leaving Ty France on the board would be a huge mistake here. TJ Friedl in the outfield for 31, 9 home runs, 6 steals, a pretty good contact hitter with a little bit of power, a 189 ISO and a 105 WRC+. He's capable of stuffing categories on the right day. Spencer Steer, 18 homers, 20 steals. Up and down in terms of quality in the slash line, but a solid 194 ISO, a 105 WRC+. Still has second base eligibility, or got it back on FanDuel. I think he had lost it at one point. 3,400 over there. A playable piece, but there might be a little bit more appealing going to India at this point for 400 less. Put him at second base, lock him into shares ahead of Ellie and Stevenson. You could still put Steer into that stack, but using him at outfielder first base, he's more along the lines of just another outfielder, just another first baseman. Jeremy Candelario, first base and third base for 29, has 19 home runs, a 204 ISO, and a lot of power upside on both sides of the plate against a pitcher like this. France just put the ball in play, kind of a hitter. 11 home runs this year, a 143 ISO and 97 WRC plus against 224, 306, 367 in one of the worst years for output from him that I can remember. 12 home runs and 14 steals from Will Benson, a good DFS asset. His quality as a major league hitter comes and goes. 196, 280, 392 on the year, but a 196 ISO for 2,400 as a mix and match outfielder. There's a lot of quality there. 11.7% barrels and 41.1% hard hits. You better believe that Will Benson can break a slate from time to time. So if you're stacking up Reds here, he's not a terrible option to work into at least a few of your Red stacks. You can see the offset in price, in projection. Just reflects the quality. It's very intermittent quality. He's not at all reliable, but he can give you big upside if you catch him on the right day. Noelvi Marte hasn't done much in 146 plate appearances in the show this season, 60% worse than average for run creation, a mix and match caliber infielder at the end of the lineup if you need him. Royals bats, Reds bats. Yeah, Royals. Oh no, Reds bats, Royals bats. Let's go with Vegas. Take the home team. Don't want to do it that way. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to take the visitors, even though Martinez is the better of the two pitchers. Let's take the visiting Royals. A little bit better of a DFS option, regardless of the half-run difference in the total there. I think it's a better lineup. Similar-ish opponents. Yeah, Royals over the Reds. Neither pitcher. Paul Skeens, the top of your pitching board on the FanDuel slate, a 2.25 ERA, 2.68 xFIP, a 32.3% strikeout rate against 5.6% walks, 12.9% swinging strikes, and 29.2% CSW so far this season. I will remind you that this kid was pitching in college last year. Fantastic option. Probably the best pitcher in baseball right now. Difficult to say that that's actually true, but I mean, at worst, he's right there. Walked in the door as in the conversation for the best pitcher in baseball. Nobody would laugh at you in any circle in baseball if you came in and said he was the best pitcher. Logan Gilbert on the other side for 10-5. Looked pretty tremendous against the Pirates as well. 25.3% strikeouts for him. What I love about most of these Mariners pitchers, you get good, not necessarily outrageous strikeout rates, but they're always cast against low walk rates. So the strikeout to walk ratios are tremendous for most of these pitchers, and that's crazy important. 2.91 ERA and a 3.34 xFIP, 0.87 WHIP for Gilbert this season, 14.4% swinging strikes, and 29.6% CSW. So, to me, Logan Gilbert's got the skill to go out there and get the strikeouts. If he wanted to be a 30% strikeout pitcher, maybe lose a few walks working around the edges, working out of the zone a little bit more, I think he could get there. It would just push the walk rate probably a little bit. I think he's got a very nice balance going for what he's trying to do here. And the results have been good. No earned runs over 7 against the Mets in his last start, struck out 6. Struck out 7 against Philly over 6 innings in a start before that. 1 earned run on 4 hits. Had a clunker against the Red Sox at Fenway, just 2 2/3, 7 earned runs, struck out 4, gave up a home run. That's his ugliest start since May 9th, where he gave up 8 earned runs at Minnesota. Those are his 2 bad starts like all season. Every other start he's been very, very good and very reliable. So no issues at 10-5. It's just if you're going up the ladder that far, maybe you keep on climbing. You can go to the 11-2 for Paul Skeens. But once you've whittled that much salary out of a lineup, finding that extra 700 can sometimes be pretty challenging. So Gilbert, an easily acceptable alternative from the top of the board pitching-wise. Don't really like anything about these lineups. Even in a contrarian attack good pitchers that are going to be popular kind of a sense, you could do better. Mariners lineup striking out at 25.9% for the projected version here. Let's see if we got the confirm. We do. Wait for that to catch. There we go. So 27.4% strikeout rate. I think it went up a 1.5 there. Victor Robles at the top of the lineup has been effective for this Mariners team, but we're already seeing the dip a little. 252, 331, 367 after he signed the extension, but he's got 17 stolen bases and just 169 chances, and he gets on at a good clip to lead off this team. It was something they were missing, a reliable table setter up top. Last year, they had J.P. Crawford doing that at a 380 clip, but he just completely evaporated this season, and now he's not in the lineup. I think he's injured. But Robles, a decent enough leadoff man. It's just throwing up against Paul Skeens, just like the rest of these Mariners. It's just a pretty tough spot. Randy Arozarena, 5.64 in the home run model. He's got 16 homers and 16 steals in a down season, a 114 WRC+. He's still been an effective player overall for run creation. It's just the usual quality that we're used to seeing out of him has just been largely lost this year. But the on-base is still good. The premium contact is all right. The counting stat numbers are all right. We're just used to seeing him at a higher level, but $3,000 is a good price to find Randy Arozarena, maybe over the weekend against a different Pirates pitcher. Cal Raleigh, 8.77, leads the team in the home run model. He's hit 26 this year, 226 ISO. If anybody's taking Skeens deep here, it's probably Cal Raleigh. Julio Rodriguez in the lineup, 4.70 in the home run model for him, 11 on the year, 18 stolen bases. He's creating runs exactly at league average, 100 WRC+. It's a mediocre season over 425 plate appearances for Julio. Jorge Polanco, mix and match caliber infielder at the absolute outside, and again, terrible spot against Skeens. 11 home runs for him, a 138 ISO at 92 WRC+. Luke Raley, 2,800, a little bit of power, a little bit of quality there. 14 homers, 9 steals, a 192 ISO, a 108 WRC+. Another player, maybe we file him away, play him from this lineup against a different Pirates pitcher over the weekend. Dominic Canzone makes pretty good contact for a guy who is completely unheralded. 7 home runs and 168 chances, a 185 ISO, 9.6% barrels and 42.3% hard hits. Yet another guy, maybe you can file him away at 2,300 to play him over the weekend. Josh Rojas, Leo Rivas, mix and match parts from the bottom. Pirates lineup, McCutcheon off the top, getting on base at an okay 337 clip, creating runs at a 109 WRC+. Has been overall pretty limited, but still barrels the ball on occasion. 26.1% strikeouts is a pretty big leap in strikeout rate, while the walks have also come down. That's where his on base went. This is typically a higher on base percentage. It's still good and it's still playable, but it's not the Andrew McCutcheon of old. We're reasonably at the end of the career here. 183 ISO on the season out of Brian Reynolds with 19 home runs on the year, a 127 WRC+. He also, kind of comes and goes, but he's maintained a very high quality slash line at 285, 351, 468. Not the best power season out of him, despite very good contact. 9.9% barrels and 46.5% hard hits. 19 home runs and a 183 ISO don't exactly match that kind of contact. 17.9% barrels and 53.6% hard hits for O'Neal Cruz. Absolutely elite contact. 18 home runs and 12 stolen bases and 439 chances, a 206 ISO. He's having a pretty good year. 113 WRC plus. He strikes out a ton. Doesn't really draw that many walks. Has some improving to do before he gets up to super high quality shortstop. But at 32, it's not a terrible option. It's just a bad matchup against Logan Gilbert. None of this is advocating for the Pirates, even though these top three hitters are playable there. IKF in the cleanup spot, exactly where you would want to find a hitter like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. That's a joke. 2,700, he fills four positions, fine. 111 WRC plus, he's a contact hitter. Rowdy Tellez, 2,400, has mostly lost his power this year, just a 139 ISO, 9 home runs and 325 chances with medium contact. Pretty big no there. Brian De La Cruz, good contact, 10.4% barrels, 41.5% hard hits, 18 homers on the year, but just a 155 ISO and 86 WRC plus. Ke'Bryan Hayes, Yasmani Grandal, and Michael A. Taylor, pretty lost seasons for all three of those guys. 4 home runs apiece, 64, 54, and 58 WRC plus marks. You can do better than all three of those guys. Any one of them in a lineup for a very cheap price is okay, but it's a bad spot to be playing Pirates to begin with, so bottom of the Pirates lineup by extension is one of the worst spots on the board. Paul Skeens way up top, but Logan Gilbert nipping at his heels not far behind. Neither one of these lineups is really on the FanDuel board for me. Yankees, very much on the FanDuel board. I assume we've got the Yanks lineup by now. Yeah, we do. If you weren't here at the very beginning, we are handling the 5 games that are on the FanDuel slate, but not on the DraftKings slate. Via the democratic process, we're handling those first. We're kind of making okay time, at least, 4:22. Trying to maybe get through these a little bit quicker than we otherwise would. But that's also the reason we're not 100% addressing anything that's going on in chat. Lone Wolf calling for the Cincy stack. I like it. No issues there at all. Travis Duarte is here, looking for the W tonight. Haven't been on a slide lately. Time to move it on up to the east side. I like it. Travis looking at Nelson. I was talking about that before. I think it's, yeah. My hope is that the public hasn't really noticed the Nelson spot. Because we saw, the first day I talked about it, his uptick and the reasons for it, he went out and he gave up that, I think it was a 4-run game. And I was like, we didn't quite get there with our play. I was disappointed that it didn't quite get there. But in every start around that over his recent run, he's been very, very real. And even that 4 run's not a disaster. It was just he was low strikeout that day, but bounced right back with a big one against the Phils the other day. He's in the low single digits on FanDuel. I absolutely love that spot at 8,300 on FanDuel against a really gettable Rays team. And that game is not on the DraftKings board. That's right. I guess that's what, our next game up? Yeah, that's our next game up. So we'll get there momentarily. Garrett Cole, top of your or one of the top options on the FanDuel slate. Easy enough to see from the number 2 spot. And again, you do get a very nice discount on Cole from Paul Skeens, even from Logan Gilbert and Corbin Burns. So easy for me to consider at the or near the top of the slate there, going up against the Tigers team with for the guys who have been in the show this year, 27.9% strikeout rate, and then a pair of guys who are making their debuts in Jace Young and Trey Sweeney here. So, yeah, there's upside for Garrett Cole. 25.9% strikeout rate, a 4.7 OERA with a 3.97 xFIP. I get it. He hasn't been exactly elite. That comes in 3 bad starts out of his 9. He gave up 6 earned to the Mets over 5 2/3, struck out 4. He gave up 4 earned to Boston over 4 1/3 on 7 hits, struck out 8 in that one. And then his second start back, another start against the Mets, he gave up 6 earned runs. That was that weird 4 home run game. He's given up 7 home runs to the Mets in 2 starts. So in the 9 starts he's made, he's given up a total of 9 home runs, and 7 of them came in 2 starts against the Mets. One allowed to the Rays and 1 allowed to the Red Sox. Weird year. So, I mean, the 4.48% home run rate so far this year is a little bit misleading because he's not facing the Mets today. But, I mean, it's not crazy out of the question either. 4.16 2 years ago in what was otherwise a dominant season. Just 2.44 last year. The home run downside for Garrett Cole comes and goes. What I always say about it is it typically comes as a solo shot or a two-run shot because he's very good at keeping guys off base. He's very good at punching his way out of trouble. That's been a little bit lessened in the short number of outings this year. A little minor dip in strikeouts, minor bump in walks. Bigger if you're looking back 2 seasons. Different same strikeout, swinging strike rate as last year, but he's gained a little in CSW, way down from 2 years ago, though. Maybe not the pitcher that he once was, but still very, very good facing a flailing Tigers team. Brent Herter, just don't do that to yourself. At 6,000, there's no value there. Again, 2 outings. This is his first full start in the show. Over 18 starts in AAA this season. He had a 21.7% strikeout rate with a 5.80 ERA and a 4.37 xFIP, and now he faces the New York Yankees. Just don't do it. It's not the pinstripes necessarily, but even the road grays can be intimidating for a mediocre rookie making his debut. Or not making his debut, but making his first official start. Gleyber Torres in the leadoff role for the Yanks, 2,700. It's an okay option for the leadoff spot. They can't do any better than that unless they're moving Soto and Judge up. So I'll take Gleyber there. All he's got to do is reach first base ahead of Soto and Judge, and you can find some value. 236, 309, 349. He hasn't exactly been consistent in those departments. 21.4% strikeouts, 9.4% walks. Feel like the strikeouts have come down a little bit over the last 2 months or so, but it's nowhere near the 14.6 that he was at last year. The hard hits and the barrels are down this season. Everything about Gleyber's year has been fairly ugly, but in spots, he's been all right, and at 2,700, just plugging him in at second base ahead of those 2 bats, there's appeal there. 45 and 49, not incorrect for Soto and Judge. 34 home runs and 43 home runs. 307 and a 373 ISO. 192 and a 219 WRC+. A 438 on base and a 467 on base percentage out of Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is at 333, 467, 707. 119% better than average for run creation this season. Overrated my ass. 27.2% barrels, 60.1% hard hits. Look at these 3 just utterly elite mashers of the baseball. Giancarlo Stanton for just 3,100. That puts the 4-man price for the top of the Yankees against a lefty, essentially a reliever, a lefty AAA starter. 3,800 apiece? Yes, it's expensive, but it's not as expensive as it might otherwise be. Verdugo for 2,800. By the way, Stanton's hit 20 home runs this year in just 325 plate appearances. Has a 243 ISO, and he's created runs 18% better than average. Don't let any of the idiot tourist Yankee fans out there tell you that Giancarlo Stanton is not good. When he's in the lineup, he is still good. And for DFS, he's even better. Verdugo and Volpe, mix and match options. Verdugo's pretty bad. 10 home runs, a 132 ISO, and 87 WRC+, just another outfielder for 28. Volpe, a little bit better maybe. 11 home runs, 20 steals. You get the dual category output from him, but he's very inconsistent. 249, 300, 388, 94 WRC+ out of him. Jose Trevino back for the Yankees. More of a defensively oriented catcher, but he's got 8 home runs and a 167 ISO with over 186 chances this year. He's fairly low strikeout. He's not terrible. DJ's also fairly low strikeout, but otherwise is terrible. 198, 272, 262, and 46% worse than average creating runs. And Oswald Peraza getting a shot here. Major League debut? No. Made 191 plate appearances. That's right. Season debut for Oswald Peraza. Over 191 chances last year, 191, 267, 272, 2 homers, and 4 steals. Didn't exactly find his footing in the show, but a fairly high-end prospect for this team. So where he's at this season. Forgot they had called him up. I didn't have this teed up. In AAA this year, 289 plate appearances, 8 home runs, 17 stolen bases, 244, 351, 382 with a 12.5% walk rate, 21.8% strikeouts. Just that 94 WRC+ somehow with that pretty effective line. It's a little bit weird. 14 home runs and 16 stolen bases in AAA last year. In 2022 in AAA, 19 home runs and 33 stolen bases. At one point, this was a conversation about whether it was going to be Peraza or Volpe that reached the show first and stuck. And it turned out that it was Volpe, and that was probably correct. But Peraza's a fairly high-end kid, so drawing him for the dead min, second shortstop and third base eligibility, obviously I like dropping him at second base, but I would play him at short. I have no real issue going to him over Volpe outside of the lineup spot. And as a wraparound back up to here, if you wanted to do that, put him at short, Glaber at second, and plug that in. Now you've got a 4-man there that includes Soto and Judge for $3,500 apiece. Yes, it includes the 9-man, but it also includes the leadoff hitter who's directly correlating with those two above. If you wanted to put him at second and skip Glaber and go with all three of the power bats, $3,600 apiece, and now you get Stanton instead of Glaber. Not a bad way to put it together. There's a pretty strong chance that's in my lineup today, just because I'm a sucker for the Yankees. 325 ISO if there are 175 plate appearances out of Kerry Carpenter. He's making absurd contact so far. 17.9% barrels, 47% hard hits. Nice to drop him back into this Tigers lineup. It's resulted in 11 home runs and a 159 WRC plus. Again, overall, that's a very good 175 plate appearances. Carpenter's no joke. He's a good hitter. It's just this lineup, they can't get their good bats all together in one spot at the same time. Parker Meadows leading off today. 10.3% barrels over 135 chances, but slashing 192, 74, 372. Not exactly ideal in the leadoff role. 4 home runs and 7 stolen bases, but what else are they going to do? Matt Vierling, 2,900, has 14 home runs, a 184 ISO, 105 WRC plus. Blam Madras in his 71 chances has delivered on the promise that he had reasonable upside when he came in that day at like the dead min. We talked about him a little bit. He's hit a home run, just a .95 ISO, but he's created a run 6% better than average, slashing 286, 343, 381. Not throwing him at Garrett Cole here. No Jace Young in the DFS lineup. Jace Young is in the real-life lineup. You get Justin Henry Malloy for 2,700. He's got 8 home runs, a 180 ISO. Decent putting bat on ball. A little bit of power upside at 6.43 in the home run model, but we're not stacking against Garrett Cole with the Tigers here. McKinstry for 24, then no Trey Sweeney, and then Jake Rogers. Pretty unplayable bottom end of the lineup between one guy not available and 2 guys, sub Mendoza, sub 250, sub 252 on base percentage. I was going to say sub 250. Pretty bad down lineup for the Tigers. Yankees bats, Garrett Cole. No Tigers. The last game that is FanDuel only, we've referred to Ryan Nelson and Ryan Pepio already a little bit on this slate. Tackling Pepio first, the guy whose parents knew how to spell Ryan. 8,200, pretty good price for a pitcher with a 26.7% strikeout rate on the year, a 3.92 ERA with a matching 3.94 xFIP. Very, very solid 12.3% swinging strike rate. A 117 mark by Stuff Plus, one of the more highly rated arsenals on this slate as far as Stuff Plus goes. When he makes mistakes, they tend to be a little bit loud. 9.9% barrels, 40 plus miles an hour, 40 plus percent hard hits, and 90 on the nose for exit velo. Maybe slightly lucky to be at 3.13. You could easily say that should amount to more than 4% home runs, which would be the danger zone for him. And we've seen this pitcher in that territory at times before. But he's gone 5 straight starts without allowing a homer. Some of the percentage that you're seeing there came from a 3 home run game and a 2 home run game in back-to-back starts against the Orioles and the Braves. A little bit forgivable there. 2 home run game earlier in the year against San Francisco. Overall, hasn't been bad for power against at all this season. Facing a fairly low strikeout but somewhat diminished version of the Diamondbacks with no Christian Walker in an extended sense. They're a gettable team here, 21.8% strikeouts. There's a little bit of additional strikeout upside for Pepio to stay around like a 1-4, let's say. I don't hate the option at 82. If you got to get cheap on FanDuel, it's not bad. $8,300 for Ryan Nelson on the other side. If you haven't been paying attention, you'd be completely baffled by those prices being the way they are. But you get a Rays lineup that's a 31.7% strikeout victim so far this year. That said, that includes Cameron Misner at 71.4% over 7 plate appearances. So we'll drop him out. We'll also drop out the 37.5 for Junior over 8 plate appearances. And we will say Yandy's got to be in there. 25.1. Guess what? Still super targetable. The uptick that we saw from Ryan Nelson that we've talked about. As I've always said, I need to see something that's like demonstrable for me to jump on a bandwagon quickly after a small sample, a few good starts aren't necessarily a reason. Oh, the roulette wheel hit black, 5 times in a row. Let's bet red. It's not necessarily true. There's no impact from those previous spins on that individual spin to explain it out further. There's also green on the board. But as far as this goes, when we looked at it, Nelson made some demonstrable changes in where he's locating his four-seam fastball and how much he was using his ancillary pitches. And it really had a good impact for him. I think it makes the arsenal dance a lot better than it used to. He gave up the 4 earned runs to Kansas City against Kansas City, and then another 4 earned runs against Pittsburgh. That was another tricky one. The KC one was the start where I first talked about the uptick. He only struck out 2 in that game. He went 6 innings, gave up 4 earned runs on 9 hits. That was against Kansas City. Against Pittsburgh 2 starts ago, he went 5 innings, gave up 4, struck out 7, walked 2, no home run allowed. But again, we missed the quality start. That's not an ideal DFS outing. Depending where he was priced, maybe you could get away with it on DraftKings. Didn't come away with the win, so probably not. Outside of those 2 games, since the uptick started, talking about 1 earned run over 5 against the Dodgers, only struck out 3. 1 earned run over 6 2/3 against the Padres at the Padres, struck out 5 against a low strikeout Padres team. 3 earned runs allowed over 7 innings on 5 hits to the Blue Jays, struck out 5. Pretty effective game there. 9 strikeouts over 5 2/3 at Wrigley, gave up 1 earned run on 3 hits. The 2 strikeout clunker against the Royals. A 9 strikeout game against the Nationals, who were low strikeout. No earned runs, 2 hits allowed over 7. And then most recently, 7 1/3 against the Phillies. 9 strikeouts, 2 earned runs on 3 hits. That is a demonstrable change in performance. It's noteworthy at this point. 8,300, pulling in just under 30 FanDuel points on the board, slightly out-projecting his opponent. I think it's very real. I think there's very believable strikeout upside here for Ryan Nelson, and that's a great price. Probably going to be my FanDuel pitcher. That said, at 82, Pepio's also got a lot of appeal for similar reasons. And tough. It's tough to say which one of these 2 guys I like better. The board doesn't help at all, or basically, actually, if I sorted by FanDuel, it would be the other way around. Tough spot. Between the 2, I would say that Nelson is probably the more vulnerable, the more gettable, regardless of what maybe like the home run model being a little bit higher for the Diamondbacks would tell you, despite the Diamondbacks being the better of these 2 teams. I do think Nelson's still the more targetable pitcher here. But looking at the Diamondbacks bats first, Corbin Carroll back up to 3,400 on FanDuel, 223, 10, 382, and 94 WRC+, 11 homers and 21 steals, making a late push to turn this into a bad but salvaged season. 330 plate appearances out of Jake McCarthy, in some ways doing what we thought Corbin Carroll would be doing at 311, 383, 457. In other ways, not so much. 6 home runs, 17 stolen bases, but a 135 WRC+. It's probably the best season of Jake McCarthy's career. Jock Peterson, 19 home runs. I continue to bang the drum for unleashing Jock against left-handed pitching. Let's just see what he can do. 13.9% barrels, 46.9% hard hits overall, 19 homers, 285, 392, 546. That spot in their lineup is so diminished when they platoon him out. Maybe he would be just as bad, but I mean, take the shot, buy the power upside. Josh Bell, medium option at first base, 2,800, 18 home runs on the year, has been definitely better in his plate appearances with the Diamondbacks than he was with Miami, but that's not saying very much. 177 ISO, 102 WRC+. He's cheap. I mean, it does help cheapen out this Diamondback stack if you just want to take the top 4. You're looking at 3,000 apiece, 12-1 total. But no Christian Walker, no Ketel Marte. 2 major dings for this Diamondbacks lineup as far as what they've looked like all season. Lourdes Gurriel, 14 homers, 142 ISO, 97 WRC+, a mix and match outfielder for 29. That's cheap for his talent, but it's about right for the output we've gotten from him this year. Adrian Del Castillo, catcher, mix and match quality there. Also, no Gabriel Moreno in this lineup. In 23 plate appearances, Castillo's been fine, or Del Castillo's been fine. He's hit a home run, 250 ISO, mix and match quality catcher. Eugenio Suarez for just 3,000, 18 home runs, major surge over the last month and change. up to a 196 ISO, a 104 WRC plus. Mix and match option at third base in this spot, but definitely a playable piece if you're going to the Diamondbacks. High priority bat in this stack. Geraldo Perdomo gets on base at a good 341 clip, creates runs at league average, doesn't do much for DFS output. Blaze Alexander gets on base at a 324, 92 WRC plus in his 180 chances. A little bit more power, maybe 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases in the tiny sample. Fills 3 positions for just 2,100, but limited spot at the bottom of the lineup. On the Rays side, Yandy Diaz from the top, 2,900, super low strikeouts, draws some walks, hits the ball extremely hard at 49.7% hard hits this year, diminished year over year, and for the last 2 seasons compared to this year, 270, 326, 393, just a 109 WRC plus with 10 home runs, but has been a very good hitter over the last couple of seasons, and remains a strong option to throw at Ryan Nelson off the top of this Rays lineup. Brandon Lau, 9.33 in the home run model, 8.08 for Chris Morel. Either one of these guys could take Ryan Nelson deep. There's nothing special about Ryan Nelson when it comes to limiting power. Getting lucky to be at 2.20% home runs, given the 40 plus, the 90 plus, the 7.3 on a decent fly ball trajectory. So Lau, Morel, either one of those guys, good for home run potential. 14 long balls in 277 chances for the second baseman, 20 on the year in 477 chances for Morel, and he's sub Mendoza, sub 300 on base. So all you're looking for really is home run upside out of Morel, but it's definitely there. Josh Lowe, a more reliable hitter, 234, 297, 402, 98 WRC plus, 7 homers and 14 steals in his 229 chances, coming off a fantastic 2023 season. Definitely affordable at 2,800. You can throw top end of this. Those 4 hitters come to $29.50 apiece. Not bad. Junior Caminero, one of the top prospects in all of baseball. 8 plate appearances of no output really to speak of in the show so far. Coming into the season, the Graphs prospect report had him first organizationally for the Rays, obviously, and overall number 2. 80 grade raw power, 70 grade game power potential. In the 236 plate appearances in AAA this season, 276, 331, 498, a 221 ISO, and 13 home runs again in 236 plate appearances. Last year, 351 chances in AA, hit 20 home runs. Stole 3 bases, slash 309, 373, 548, created runs 40% better than average, had a 239 ISO against a 17.1% strikeout rate, 9.1% walks, and he was 19 years old. Kid's still just 20. This is like a facsimile of like Jackson Churio talent level, maybe even more. And coming in at similarly rocketed through the minor leagues with ridiculous production at really, really young ages. So getting a shot here at a young 20 years old. Dylan Carlson for 27, and by the way, fills third base pretty admirably for just 25 on this team. I have no issue going like 1-2 Lau and Caminero and getting real cheap with it. 2,800 apiece. Again, as much as I want to play Nelson at that price, you can throw Rays bats at him. This is a 4-corner spot for sure. Carlson, mix and match quality at 2,700. Hasn't given us anything this season, but does have talent, and the Rays are very good at extracting that talent. Maybe more of a name to file away for next year. Ben Rortvedt, assuming he's got a contract. I think he's still got options and everything. Ben Rortvedt, or Arbiers, really. Mix and match quality catcher. Jose Caballero just here for stolen bases, and then Cameron Misner at the bottom of the lineup hasn't done anything. Dead min price. Misner is nobody. He has hit 15 home runs and stolen 27 bases in AAA this season. 433 plate appearances last year. 21-21 season. Year before 16-32. But those were his age 24, 25, and 26 seasons in AAA. And this was his, the other day was his major league debut. I feel like he would have been here by now on an organization like this if he was anybody. Low-ranked overall organizational prospects. Mix and match at 2,100 at best at the bottom of the lineup. I'm going to say, since it projects this way, Nelson, Pepio, Diamondbacks, Rays. All 4 sides are playable. Welcome to the show, DraftKings. How you guys doing out there? Everybody still here? Good, good. Trey taking a brief intermission. It's actually a really good idea. Give me half a second. I'm just going to 2 feet away to fill this coffee mug. Can you still hear me from over here? I don't know if you guys can hear me from over here. I'm right back here. Watch me spill coffee all over the keyboard. Long pour. All right. Now we're getting a little silly. Well, that was fun. All right. Let's do it, DraftKings. Larry C's here. Finally, says Larry. Lone Wolf's looking at the Vientos one-off like that. Cincinnati Philly. Definitely has appeal. Red Sox, O's. Let's see if we got the Sox lineup. We probably do. We do indeed. We do indeed. Remember, as we dive into this, your FanDuel slate locks in less than 2 hours at 6:40. I have to keep that in mind as well. Nick Sogard lost his hand in this. I believe Nick Sogard's right hand. Oh, no, switch hitter. Apologies, Nick Sogard. This was the biggest thing that was annoying the other day when the model reverted. And there's still going to be a couple guys that I have to catch up on. The guys that just got over the 2 week. It only went back in time like 2 weeks. But I lost the back-end update that I had put in that interim, so I had to reinstall that. And then guys like that who had just like come up to the show lost all their handedness that I have to drop in there for each one when they get called up. So that was annoying. Those were the things I didn't want to spend the entire show on Wednesday trying to catch. All right, Corbin Burns, 97 and 10,000. One of the top pitchers on the slate overall, but a very challenging matchup here. He's your number 2 pitcher on the DraftKings board at 16.87. That's behind Sean Manaea. So on talent, on name recognition, etc., he's easily the top of the board. Same goes against Arrighetti, Schwellenbach, Garrett Crochet, who's not on the board at 93, and all these guys down here. So believably, like the ace of the DraftKings slate is Corbin Burns. All these other top-end options here aren't available on your DK board. So, if you just go by name recognition and the, little feeling of safety that putting a pitcher like Corbin Burns into your lineup gives you on DK, he's there. It's a difficult price at 97, though, against the Red Sox. I do think he would be in the mix firmly of pitchers that I'm rostering, and in this mix of the top-level pitchers, of course. And like I said, it's these guys and then these guys, and nobody else in between. But he's probably a little lower end based on that opponent than Arrighetti, Schwelly, and Manaea, weird as that might be. He's been diminished for the season as well. Still has a monster rating by Stuff Plus at 116, 2.71 ERA, but a 3.56 xFIP. Just 22.9% strikeouts. 5.8% walk is still pretty terrific. 1.05 whip is fine. 13% swinging strikes, but just 28.4% CSW there. A little bit limited in the strike throwing overall, but it hasn't burnt him for walks, obviously. But just 22.9% strikeouts is a little bit concerning. He's given up basically limited home runs, 2.67% home runs, and he's terrific at limiting hard hits, limiting exit velo, limiting barrels. So that's something that he's going to take away from the Red Sox pretty effectively, and you can see the impact that it has in the home run model. Even Rafi Devers and Tristan Casa, 7.66 and 7.74 in the heart of that lineup from the left side. So it's a little bit problematic for a spot to stack Red Sox, but it's a challenging spot to grab Corbin Burns. I do think that impacts his ownership, of course. More so on FanDuel, where there are just an abundance of options. On DraftKings, let's see where it lands. Come on. It's actually not bad. Everybody that I named as the potential alternatives on DK there, all those believable guys are out projecting him for ownership, which makes sense. They're all cheaper. Actually, Schwelly's more expensive, but a much better matchup. I'll call it still high because of the opponent, but not at all unplayable ownership. You don't have to worry about ownership on Burns, but it's not as far off either as I would have hoped on DK. Gonna definitely be lower owned by comparison to all the other options on FanDuel. Cooper Criswell's coming in bulk relief after Brennan Bernardino. You don't want anybody from the Red Sox pitching staff in this one. Top of the board on the Red Sox lineup, Jarren Duran back after his egregious mistake, let's say. Let's hope that's all it is. Hopefully those things aren't in his heart or his regular vocabulary. But back in the lineup, having a tremendous year. Obviously a little bit tarnished, but 287, 345, 495, a 208 ISO, 128 WRC+, 14 home runs and 29 stolen bases on the year. Pretty dynamite season from the lefty outfielder. 57-36 against Corbin Burns. Not exactly ideal, but if you're going to the Red Sox, you're probably paying for it. Willie Abreu, 4,200, 2,900, 14 homers out of him, a 241 ISO, 131 WRC+. For the discount, 2,900. If you need to leave Duran on the shelf and just go like that, that's not terrible. Or like go down to Yoshida instead of Wong, depending on how you want to handle that. So I mean, Abreu giving you better contact overall, 12.9% barrels, 49.5% hard hits, higher strikeout obviously, but drawing a few more walks in his more limited sample than what Duran's done. It's not a terrible alternative. The ideal obviously would be to have them both. And I just noticed where Tristan Casas is priced. Wow. It sucks that this is against Burns because they'll have him fixed for tomorrow. 2,300 is a wild misprice for Tristan Casas. 4,900 is cheap on DraftKings, but 2,300 is wild. 6 home runs in his 90 plate appearances earlier in the year, at 269 ISO. Apparently it still hurts when he swings, but or at least as of like a week ago when I read that report. But if he's healthy enough for the Red Sox, he's healthy enough for me. It's just an awful matchup against Burns. You can see soaking up a lot of his home run juice, but that would be above 10 against a lot of pitchers in baseball. So even against Burns at 23, that's appealing. 37 for Rafi Devers, not a bad price to pay for him, but a terrible matchup. 59 on DraftKings. He's hit 25 home runs, has a 283 ISO and a 152 WRC+. Another premium lefty bat from this lineup, but again, diminished by Corbin Burns' excellence in inducing weak and medium contact and keeping the ball in the yard, if nothing else. Connor Wong, still having a good year, 293, 350, 437, 11 home runs, 116 WRC+. Yoshida at 284, 359, 412 with a 115 WRC+. Looks pretty appealing for just 2,900 if you're going to Red Sox. Sogard, Hamilton, and Dan Rafaela, all at least effective mix and match pieces. Nobody above average for run creation by WRC plus this year, but they've given us some counting stats for DFS. Dan Rafaela, most specifically, all the runs and RBIs he's provided, and some home run and stolen base output. So he's a category stuffer. He's just not at all consistent. Sub 300 on base. 303 on base out of Hamilton so far with 30 steals on the board. Imagine what he could do if he could actually get on base at even like a 330 kind of a clip. A lot of speed in this Red Sox lineup, for sure. A lot of speed, a lot of run creation, a lot of home run power, but again, just a really challenging matchup against Corbin Burns. So they're diminished, but I think they landed like, mid-board-ish because they're a little bit difficult to suppress as well with all the talent in this Red Sox lineup. On the other side, speaking of talent, the Orioles. Adley Rutschman, Anthony Santander. Let me tell you how excited I am to have these two young and improving lineups in the AL East for the foreseeable future. Not a good situation for the Yankees. It's a great situation for baseball. It's going to be fun. But damn, is it going to be challenging and competitive over the next few years. Adley, top of the lineup at 53-33, a dynamite option at catcher on the DraftKings board and very playable at first base on FanDuel. Even if you wanted to forgo Mountcastle and just go with Adley at the first base catcher first base spot and then somebody else at util, that's fine. I do still like Mountcastle, and he's only 3,000, so you could go with both of them. But as an alternative piece, we're going, one in one lineup, one in the other lineup, however you want to handle it. Definitely, Rutschman has the ability to keep that spot locked down. 17 home runs, a 114 WRC plus this year. 36 home runs from Anthony Santander. Having his best season after a stretch of seasons where he's been a completely underrated power hitter. 36 homers, a 293 ISO, a 135 WRC plus this year. Tremendous barrel rate, very good hard hit rate. Getting outpaced in both those categories, more dramatically so in hard hits. 12.6% barrels versus 12% barrels for Gunnar versus Santander, but 56.1% hard hits versus 42.5. Gunner's got 31 home runs with a 289, 374, 558 slash line, a 268 ISO. 4,200, he's a little bit cheaper, I think. than Bobby Witt was on the FanDuel slate. He fits in like between Trey Turner and Bobby Witt. 5,900 easy to pay for on DraftKings, especially if you're going to this team. That said, those three guys together, that's a high price. It's offset a little bit further down the lineup. Mountcastle at just 4,200, and you can put him and Adley in the lineup, obviously, on DK. So that brings you down. If you just straight line it off the top, brings you to 5,100 apiece. If you skip Cowser and just grab like Eloy at 33, that brings it down to 4,800 apiece for a stack that includes Adley, Santander, and Gunnar. That's not a terrible option on DraftKings. That stack right there. You could alternately go to Jackson Holiday, same story, and get a second baseman into it. So the way that the bottom of this lineup is priced with all the talent that's here, it makes the Orioles really interesting as far as just clicking different things together, having a bunch of options to click together with different teams, and keeping these three prices at the top reasonable when you pay for the full stack. Mountcastle this year jumping back up, 13 home runs, 271, 311, 432, a 109 WRC plus. 18 homers on the board out of Colton Cowser this year, 250, 328, 456, a 206 ISO, 121 WRC plus. Very strong rookie season, over 406 plate appearances out of Cowser. And he's been mashing the ball all season, 14.1% barrels, 46.8% hard hits from the lefty. Not a bad option at all. Eloy Jimenez getting a couple opportunities to play in this lineup, let's say, and potentially against a weak pitcher like Cooper Criswell. 5 home runs on the year, 260, 312, 360. As long as he's in the lineup, and especially at these prices, I'm always going to be intrigued by the bat. The production hasn't been there at all this year, but at least he's healthy. At least he's playing every day. 8.9% barrels, 50.2% hard hits. I'm going to cling to that and cling to past success and say that Eloy Jimenez is still very playable here. Holiday for just 34 at second base on DraftKings. 29 shortstop and second base eligible on FanDuel. Obviously, you prefer him at second. Slashing 165, 223, 53 over his 91 plate appearances, but has been way better in this recall of the show. 5 home runs on the board already, 188 ISO, 61 WRC plus. Not great, but a lot of that has to do with the first chunk of plate appearances that we saw that were so bad. Definitely in play and just making ridiculous contact. If you need a tiebreaker, that's the tiebreaker for me more so than anything over here. Ced Mullins, still playable, late lineup, 13 home runs, 20 stolen bases in what is, a bad season over 365 plate appearances. He's at 224, 279, 402. But this is actually pretty decent counting stat output in that sample of plate appearances. It's not terrible. 92 WRC plus is bad, but he only cost 2,900, 3,600. This is a guy who last year just 15-19 in 455 plate appearances. So he's basically outperformed that in fewer chances this year. 16-34 2 years ago. And then 30-30 back in 2021. Ced Mullins has a lot of ability for creating DFS points. So for 29, 36 across sites, definitely in play. Ramon Urias is another player you got to go back in time a little bit to find true quality, but he does have odd little amounts of home runs. Home run power, 6 home runs on the season in 222 chances, a 6.8% barrel, 36.6% hard hits. We've talked about him a couple times in the past as a playable $2,100 option at third base at the bottom, 25 multi-position on FanDuel. Not ideal, not consistent, but playable. Orioles bats, Corbin Burns, Red Sox bats. And Red Sox definitely diminished in this spot. It's more about the Orioles. No Red Sox pitchers again. Yeah, I don't think that there's any justification for what Duran said, regardless of what the fans were saying to him, guys. I disagree with both Lone Wolf and Larry. Saying that he should be up there with a tennis racket doesn't warrant gay slurs in response. Sorry, that's just... You guys are wrong. And professionals are supposed to be able to take fan heckling. So I really don't care what the fan said. Maybe the fan was wrong too. Maybe both guys were wrong, but Jarren Duran was definitely wrong. Come on. Can't use that word these days. Shouldn't ever have used it. Going back to the 80s when it was common. Shouldn't have been using it then. Can't use it now. Come on. You guys know that. Marlins and the Mets. Let's see if the Marlins lineup is in. It's honestly disappointing that you guys would back him. Marlins lineup is here. I don't see really any need to consider Roderi Munoz at 66 against a pretty good Mets lineup. 5.67 ERA with a 5.25 xFIP, walking more than 10%, striking out 18.7%. 6,600, I get the price is nice, but you've got much more usable, viable, despite being highly owned, much more usable pitchers in that price range today. So I don't think we're going to Mr. Munoz. 3 strikeouts, 3 earned runs allowed over 5 against the Padres in his most recent start. Last time out, time before that, 3 2/3 against the Reds, gave up 4 earned and 6 runs on 7 hits, struck out just 2. 7 strikeouts, but it came against the Rays, still gave up 2 earned runs, 4 hits in that one. 6 earned runs allowed to Baltimore. Doesn't look like there's any quality to worry about with Mr. Munoz. At 8,700, Sean Manaea is your top projected DraftKings pitcher, and that's a very good price to find Sean Manaea at against the Miami Marlins. Definitely some upside there. You need full innings out of him. Last time, just 3 innings against the Mariners. Struck out 3 but walked 5. 3 earned runs on 4 hits. Not an ideal outing there. But the 2 starts before that, 7 innings apiece against St. Louis and Minnesota, 2 notably better teams than the Marlins. No earned runs allowed in either one of those starts. Struck out 10 Cardinals and 11 Twins. 9 strikeout game earlier in the year, a 10 strikeout game. We know Manaea's got good strikeout stuff. 24.2% on the season, 3.44 ERA with a 4.31 xFIP. He runs into some walls sometimes. He runs into some short outings and inefficiency sometimes. You can see the 9.9% walks, not ideal. So you get games like that one against the Mariners. 3 strikeouts and 5 walks adds up on your pitch count, and then he yielded 4 hits, 3 earned runs. So it just, bad DFS outing there. But more often than not, you get a high-quality day. As long as he's able to limit the walks, he should have no issues here against Miami. It's not just a saying, Trip. It's a slur. To you, it's just a saying. That. We're not having this argument right now. We've got too much to talk about. You're wrong. You are completely incorrect, Trip. It's not just a saying. Oh, these things happen is just a saying. The F slur, as they refer to it, is not just a saying. It was used popularly to mean pussy or something like that back in the 80s when people were ignorant about these sorts of things, and people who were offended by it back then had no voice. That's why it seems like to people like you that it's just a saying. People were offended by it back then just as much. It was just as much of a gay slur back then. The people who were offended had no voice. Now that people have a voice, you're finding out how offensive these things are. Doesn't mean they were never offensive. Doesn't mean they're just a saying. You can back whoever you want. Absolutely, Lone Wolf. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. Just like you said in there. Totally true. But one of us is wrong and one of us is right. New York Mets going up against Roderi Munoz. I don't think there's any real reason to play the Miami Marlins. If you want to go there, Xavier Edwards off the top of the lineup, having a good year, over 175 plate appearances. 358, 437, 432, a 147 WRC+. Jake Berger, 23 home runs on the year, 222 ISO, obviously on a very nice tear. Just cost 3,400, 4,800 at first base, third base across sites. A lot of upside for Jake Berger to homer. If Sean Manaea has a bad day against the righty Thunder, that's a decent bat to have in your lineup, but also entirely skippable. 11.67, he's the only appealing home run bat in the Marlins lineup. Jonah Bride, 5.62 in the home run model, has 5 home runs on the year, a 195 ISO, a 136 WRC+. Playable, miscast as a 3-hitter, 31-28. He's affordable at least. It's not a terrible option, but there's no real reason to go to the Marlins outside of just, maybe some contrarian upside. Jesus Sanchez against the high-quality lefty, not ideal, but is a very good power bat. 15 home runs, kind of the 15 home runs, the 179 ISO kind of fly in face of the 12.5% barrels and 53% hard hits. But Sanchez does have a lot of lefty power. It's just, again, not a good spot to throw him. Derek Hill, Otto Lopez, Emmanuel Rivera, David Hensley, and Ali Sanchez from the bottom of the lineup. Just diminishing returns as you go down the Marlins lineup, quite literally in almost in exact order there by WRC+. There's not a lot of quality. There's just a lot of cheap prices, a little bit of flexibility there. Top priority bat in that group of hitters is probably Otto Lopez, just because of the 26 with 4 positions on FanDuel. That said, for 3,000 at second base on DraftKings, not at all appealing. Shano hits it exactly. If you called him a fucking asshole, nobody cares and you don't get suspended. Lone Wolf, what? Drop it? It's my show, dude. I'll talk about whatever I want. I don't know where this attitude's coming from today, Lone Wolf. Feel free, if you don't like it, to turn the show off. That would be a weird result for us to have come all this way together and then have you bail at this point. But I will talk about whatever I want to talk about on this show. Fortunately, that is almost always baseball. And Lone Wolf, people are fucking snowflakes, grow some balls. I'm this close to just booting you, Lone Wolf. Just for the record. Wouldn't make me happy, but why don't you drop it? I'm not judging you. Well, I am judging you because I'm the arbitrator of who can stay and who goes in this show. But why don't you be the one to drop it and just chill? Or you can just go vote for the fucking fascist Nazi motherfucker wannabe and I'll just never do these shows again. How about we fucking do that? So fucking pissed off at this now. Everybody who agrees with Lone Wolf can fucking leave. Go ahead. I do not care. You're wrong. I'm right. New York Mets, Francisco Lindor off the top of the lineup, 3,800, 5,300 at shortstop. He's a superstar. Play him. 23 home runs, 24 stolen bases at 200 ISO, 128 WRC+. Mark Vientos, I talked about it at the beginning of the show, 3,900. He's absurdly cheap. That is just a stupid broken price. Dude's got 19 home runs and 288 plate appearances. He's got a 282 ISO, 148 WRC+. Play him. Brendan Nimmo, 46-32, 16 home runs, 11 steals, 172 ISO, 115 WRC+. If you're going to the Mets, Nimmo's pretty appealing. He agrees with you guys about who to vote for and the use of anti-gay slurs. So I guess you guys love Brendan Nimmo. I'm not a big fan, but he's a very good hitter, and you should play him for DFS. 342 on base, 115 WRC+. JD Martinez, 7.22 in your home run model, 12 home runs on the season. He's had pretty good output this year, 177 ISO, 124 WRC+. Pete Alonso, just 4,600, 3,400. Pretty cheap for Pete Alonso, I got to say. 12.2% home runs, 43.2% hard hits on the year, 26 homers on the season. 227 ISO. Excellent option at first base. Pete Alonso, always on the board against a pitcher like Rodrigo Munoz. Definitely even more so. The Mets look great. Look at all the double-digit barrels off the top 5 hitters. Look at all the 40+% hard hits off the top 5 hitters. Everybody above 43, too. Alonso's actually the low man at 43.2%. That's ridiculous. Jesse Winker makes great contact from the left side of the plate, costs just 2,800, 3,600 in the outfield, 11 home runs and 14 steals, a 150 ISO, a 122 WRC+ on the season. Winker's tremendous. Francisco Alvarez for 3,500, 2,600, 5 home runs on the year, a 150 ISO, a 106 WRC+. Fantastic catcher option. He's hitting for a little bit better in terms of being a hitter this year than a slugger. The results have been a little bit mixed. We've cooled off from that, from the ridiculous output that he had with a 290, 340 something. Thank you too, KT. I appreciate you. Jeff McNeil is a slap hitter. That weird stretch of home runs that he was hitting is pretty much over. He's got 11 on the year. I think he climbed from 6 to 11 in 10 days, and that's basically all you're ever going to see again out of Jeff McNeil. Slap hitter who's not really slap hitting, 237, 294, 384, and 94 WRC plus. Harrison Bader, decent mix and match outfielder who can give you some counting stats at the bottom. 265, 304, 396, 2 points below average for run creation this year. 8 homers, 15 steals. He can get involved against a pitcher like Roderick Munoz. Mets are a fairly high priority stack today. This goes Mets, Sean Manaea, nothing from the Marlins. 2 playable pitchers in this one. I still think of Andrew Heaney as more of a target than a high-quality option, but your DraftKings board is a little bit light on playable pitchers today, so I do think that you can go there. Woods Richardson, 69.81 at 21.4% strikeouts on the season, a 3.78 ERA, a 4.25 xFIP. Has had some good starts this year. Like I said at the top of the show, he's been effective enough times that I'm kind of a believer against a team like Texas that he can succeed for these prices. I think this is very interesting. He's one of your clear-cut, high-quality bargain bin options today. Last time out, 7 strikeouts, 2 earned runs on 4 hits over 7 against Cleveland of all teams. That's a low strikeout squad. That's a very, very good start. Took the loss, but that's not his fault. 3 earned runs over 4 innings against the White Sox. Gave 6 strikeouts, but gave up the 3 runs on 6 hits. Walked 3 in that one. Not a good start. Against the Mets, 6 earned runs over 3 1/3. This is the downside. He struck out 2. He gave up 6 earned runs, home run, 3 walks. A good 6-inning start against the Phils. Struck out 5, no runs, 3 hits, 2 runs, and 7 hits against the Giants over 4 1/3, but struck out 7. It's a good stretch of games in here. There's obviously some downside to playing a pitcher like this. The Rangers are definitely good enough to get to him, but the price is right. Definitely here. Over here, he's just more of another, just another guy on the list. Right? Fits in like there. There's a lot of options in that $8,000 range. He's one of the options there, but I would probably end up avoiding the Rangers if at all possible with my $8,000 pitchers on FanDuel. For Heaney, 74 is okay on DraftKings, but I would probably, as I said when I was breaking this down, I'd probably rather have the 2 guys in the bargain bin above him there. But 74 puts him on that list of value pitchers. 22.3% strikeouts, a 4.05 ERA, a 4.34 xFIP on the season, but a nice 12% swinging strike rate. Hasn't been bad with the walks, and like I said, he's been managing the power a little bit better this season. Just below the mark for hard hits, just below the mark for exit velo, 3.11% home runs. Is vulnerable to home runs for sure. 3.59% home runs last year, 4.52 the year before. Fly ball trajectory pitcher at 19.6 degrees average launch angle. So when he makes mistakes, they're loud, big mistakes. And you can see Royce Lewis at 17.8 in the home run model, 8.5 for Carlos Santana up at the top, 9.7 for Matt Wallner, and so on and so forth. There is power against. So I think you can stack Twins here, I think you can stack Rangers here, and I think you can roster either one of these pitchers. Obviously not all 4 of those things in the same lineup. That would be fun. Both pitchers against a full stack, and then just a one-off from one other team to make it work. Manny Margot at the top of the Twins lineup. Not an appealing option. 241, 296, 344. He gets leadoff spots against lefties. He's fine, but if you're going to Twins, I can find you 4 or 5 better options than that. Just a good spot for a cheap price in the lineup for correlated scoring the first time through. Santana for 37.29 has 16 home runs on the year, a 180 ISO, a 112 WRC plus. 358 plate appearances of Max Kepler, just 8 home runs and a 140 ISO, but Max is way better for lefty power than that over time. Weird season out of Max. 6% better than average for run creation, slashing 268, 319, 409. Has been capable, not terrible, but not the power bat that we know and love. 57-39 for Royce Lewis across sites, a 17 again in the home run model, 15 home runs and 174 chances, a 362 ISO. Dude can absolutely mash up in the cleanup spot. Jose Miranda for 44.26 has 9 home runs on the year, a 186 ISO, a 136 WRC plus. 124 plate appearances of Matt Wallner have been pretty tremendous. 7 home runs in the sample, a 327 ISO, and just elite contact, 30.2 and 60.4 barrels and hard hits. Not bad. High strikeout, but fairly high walk. Pretty much looking like a 3 true outcomes hitter with a lot of power upside for the 31-4,000 across sites. Matt Wallner is a high priority bat, even with the lefty-lefty if you're going to this team. Kyle Farmer back in our lives. 2,100 across sites, 200, 299, 303 in a disappointing year. 25 points below average for run creation this year. We just got odd little home run and stolen base output out of Kyle Farmer down lineup on this team like last year, much like with Michael A. Taylor. They were two of our favorite late lineup targets. Hasn't been that in his limited sample of plate appearances this year. Mix and match option at best. Ryan Jeffers is a catcher with some power, 17 homers on the year, a 9.18 in the home run model with a 2.19 ISO. 4,200, definitely playable on your DraftKings slate. 3,000 on FanDuel, a little bit more limited from late in the lineup, but a cheap, cheap enough home run potential. And then Eduardo Julian back in the lineup. 2,700 is pretty cheap at second base on DraftKings. 2,000 dead min on FanDuel. Kind of interesting. Lefty, not ideal, but if we can manage to chase Heaney after a minute, that becomes an interesting play. Julian last year, 16 home runs and 408 plate appearances with a 195 ISO. It's a decent power bat. I just don't know if he can get on. Well, he got on a 381 clip actually last year. I don't remember that. I don't remember him getting on base so effectively last year. He was really limited over his 209 plate appearances earlier in the season, but that's an interesting hitter. And especially at the dead min on FanDuel, that helps make things work. Twins are an interesting option today. The Rangers lineup, Semien Seager off the top, obviously easy to get to. 158 ISO and dead at league average for run creation for Semien in a bit of a down year, 17 home runs, but we've talked about him a lot. Nothing really over here is indicative of any kind of struggles going on. It's just weird year for output. So you can catch him on the right day at a cheap price for his talent on any given slate. 55.37 for Corey Seager, offset from the pricing on the other premium shortstops on FanDuel, and is probably your top shortstop so far on the DraftKings board. 26 home runs, a 225 ISO, a 135 WRC plus, and makes elite contact in the second spot in the lineup. Josh Smith for 41, 3,000, 12 home runs on the year, a 156 ISO, 124 WRC plus. Maintaining, everything's come down after the ridiculous start that he had in the first couple of very, very effective months. 273, 64, 26, still a good year, but predictably diminished around the X stats to, a little bit of normalization there. Adolis Garcia, 20 home runs and 10 stolen bases, a 179 ISO, slashing just 227, 292, 406. Disappointing in a lot of ways for that, but 11.7% barrels, 47.8% hard hits. Just buy the power for a fair price. That 4,300 for Adolis Garcia's talent is very cheap on DraftKings. 32, very playable on FanDuel. 3,600, 3,000 for Nathaniel Lowe at first base, 10 home runs on the year, just a 126 ISO, but a very effective hitter. 257, 352, 383, creating runs 11% better than average. A cheap way to fill first base, gives you a little bit of upside, has more power than he's displayed so far this year. Josh Young for 43.31, very cheap for a guy who was good last year. Over 75 plate appearances, has been effective this year. 108 WRC plus, a 197 ISO, and 3 home runs in the tiny sample. Just 43.31 for him against a middle of the board kind of a pitcher. Not bad. Wyatt Langford at 39.29, 7 home runs, 11 steals, a mediocre rookie season, but playable. Carson Kelly has 8 home runs and just 229 chances this year with a 153 ISO, a 110 WRC plus, 41.3% hard hits. Appealing enough catcher if you're going to this team. Leody Taveras at the bottom of the lineup, mix and match play for some counting stats. 9 home runs, 13 steals, but just an 82 WRC plus on the season. Twins bats up top probably. Man, Rangers are higher, 4.40, huh? All right, I'll go with Vegas. Rangers bats, Twins bats. Woods Richardson above Heaney, though. Especially on DK for the discount. A couple of bargain bin pitchers in this one. I think they're both believable bargain bin pitchers. Where the hell is this game? No lineups yet. Gav, over 6,600, 8,000 over his 8 starts, 39 innings, 24.4% strikeouts, 4.38 ERA with a 3.73 xFIP. And again, this kid was one of the most highly regarded pitching prospects on his way up. And has had decent results in the show. Had a bit of a cup of coffee last year, 16 starts, 82 innings, 23.5% strikeout rate, 3.29 ERA, but a 4.54 xFIP, a 10.7% walk rate. So in his starts in the show this year, he's corrected that. He was injured and then pitched in some rehab starts earlier in the season. That's why we're at just 8 starts. Swinging strikes are down a little bit, so is the CSW, but he's managed to walk fewer hitters and strike out more despite that. So arguably there's even more upside than we've already seen, and he's already been pretty quality in some spots. Just a really challenging matchup against the Brewers. They're a good team, and they're good for run creation. Christian Yelich officially got his back surgery today, so he's officially out for the rest of the year. But it's still a high-quality Brewers squad. I just think 6,600, that price is very, very appealing on the DraftKings slate. At 8,000, he's a lot less of a consideration. He's in play on FanDuel. It wouldn't shock me if you had a good FanDuel day for the price, and he helps you buy things. But he's just more of another $8,000 pitcher on a deep, deep FanDuel pitching slate. Savali for 68 on DraftKings, 77 on FanDuel. Probably more playable as a $6,800 SP2 on DraftKings. A 5.02 ERA, but a 4.28 xFIP indicates the real quality of the pitcher. 21.9% strikeouts is okay. It doesn't represent the uptick that we were hoping for this year, but it's effectively around where he's been through his career. He's given up a odd amount of home runs, a little bit of premium contact, and a 4.46 home run rate. That's a little bit unlucky, I would say, for Savali. 6 1/3 in his most recent start. He struck out 5. He gave up just 2 earned runs, a home run, walked 2, but that's a decent start. 5 earned runs over 4 innings against the Nationals. Start before that was obviously a disaster. 3 good starts before that. 1, 2, and 3 earned runs with a handful of strikeouts. His season is by and large normalized over the last, let's say, 10 starts or so. Still some extreme ugliness in the season-long numbers from the beginning of the year. Pitching on a better team now. I think there's enough upside. It's just terrible opponent to find it with the Guardians at a 18.7% strikeout rate for the season. It doesn't make me run off to want to roster Guardians bats for the fact that Savali's on the mound. They're just a 4.33. But I think, again, this one and that last one, kind of 4 corner spots with some value pitching available in both games. Either one of these teams could absolutely succeed against either one of these pitchers. It's actually a pretty interesting battle between two good teams. If we're looking at the Guardians lineup from the top, Stephen Kwan, 4,600, 3,300, 13 home runs, 9 stolen bases on the year, at 383 on base, a 146 WRC+. Just 8.6% strikeouts and 7.9% walks. Kwan is one of the top table setters in the league. Dynamite correlated scoring play, if nothing else. Will Brendan for 28, 24, 8 home runs, a 145 ISO, mix and match outfielder at best, but if he's hitting second today, gains ground just by the virtue of the lineup spot. Jose Ramirez, 63-43, 31 home runs, 27 steals, a 262 ISO, a 140 WRC+. Josh Naylor, 3,500 on FanDuel, 4,700 on DraftKings. Nicely discounted for a guy with 26 home runs, a 233 ISO, a 124 WRC+, 9.1% home runs, 44.1% hard hits, just 17.2% strikeouts. I struggle to figure out why Naylor is just 4,700 on DraftKings. 35 on FanDuel is correct. David Fry for 36, catcher only on DK. 29, get him at first base or in the outfield on FanDuel. 11 home runs on the year. Most of them came in a rush early, but he's held down a pretty decent season. 321 plate appearances of 268, 369, 441, a 130 WRC+. Andres Jimenez at 37-28, 5 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 84 WRC+ on the year over 469 plate appearances. Kind of a disappointing year for him. He's effective enough in terms of base hits and getting on base. Actually, he could be better at getting on base, but he's effective enough at putting bat on ball. He's just a light contact guy, not an ideal spot in the lineup. Jonkenzie Noel, found out the other day that his nickname is apparently Big Christmas, which I absolutely love. 12 in the home run model. He's got 9 home runs and 94 plate appearances in the show so far, 345 ISO. Kid can hit for power. I don't know if he can do anything else, but he can hit for power. Bo Naylor, 29-25 across sight. Disappointing year from him at the catcher spot. 73 WRC+. 9 home runs, but very, very inconsistent. Pretty difficult spot. Brian Ruscio is just here to play defense. On the Brewers, Bryce Turang, 36 steals, but just a 91 WRC+ off the top of the lineup. 318 on base. Needs to improve in terms of his ability to reach first base, and everything else will improve around that. Playable part at second, though, for 3,000, 4,300. Jackson Chourio, 42, 3,000, remains very cheap. He's got 15 home runs and 16 stolen bases, a 110 WRC+, slashing 274, 324, 41. Pretty killer season out of the rookie, and another player that this is the worst we're going to see him. He's 20 years old. He's absurdly young for a full season of this kind of quality. Maybe people were expecting more. This is a dynamite rookie season from this kid. Tyler Black for 27 and still just 2,100 hitting third for the Brewers now. First base, third base, outfield on FanDuel. Good minor league numbers. Hasn't done much in the show yet, over 47 plate appearances. But if you're going to Brewers, that's a very cheap bet on both sites at first base, and the multi-position makes him effective on FanDuel. You plug him into an outfield role, it's not bad. William Contreras, one of the top catcher options for 51 on DraftKings, highly playable, 16 home runs on the year, a 180 ISO, 128 WRC+. Willie Adames having one of his better seasons in recent memory. He only cost 45 at shortstop. That's a nicely discounted shortstop that's putting up quality numbers all season long on DraftKings. 35 on FanDuel is expensive, but justified. 251, 331, 446 this year, a 195 ISO, 116 WRC+. 21 homers and 13 stolen bases, not bad at all. 109 plate appearances of Garrett Mitchell, mix and match caliber outfielder. Rhys Hoskins has 20 home runs and 383 chances this year with a 213 ISO. Don't sleep on Rhys Hoskins' power upside. For 39 at first base on DK, he's a more reliable option than Tyler Black. He's just more expensive. On FanDuel, you can get them both. $2,900 is not a bad price for Rhys Hoskins' power upside. Sal Frelick and Joey Ortiz, a couple of mix and match options down lineup. Ortiz, a 110 WRC+, has been the better of the two. His overall output's been limited for DFS purposes, but he's creating runs in a positive sense, gets on base as a correlated scoring play at a decent clip. Sal Frelick's got a little bit more speed. He's stolen 15 bases. Either guy as a wraparound to the top is fine, but probably not both guys together. Gavin Williams, Aaron Savali for value. Guardians bats, Brewers bats. All four corners are in play. The value of these two pitchers on DraftKings probably outweighs the appeal of the bats on DraftKings. Garrett Crochet is not going to pitch enough to be worth talking about. Although he did go 6 in his most recent outing. Struck out just 3. How many pitches did he throw on that one? Oh, that was... I was like, how did that happen? Yeah, he went 2 1/3 in his last start. Forgot to actually scroll down to the next pitcher. That's what threw me. Yeah, just 2 1/3 in his last start. Struck out 5, gave up 4 home runs and 7 earned runs on 9 hits to the Cubs. Start before that went just 4 innings. So yeah, Garrett Crochet not gonna pitch enough. Screwed myself up there. 9,300, totally unjustified price on DraftKings. That's a who he was price, not a who he is price. 8,500 on FanDuel. I don't think you can go there. I'm not going to give you the quality start. No chance. And the Astros are an elite opponent. 18.4% strikeout rate for this projected version of the lineup. I'll see if we've got it confirmed in. There they are. Both of these lineups are in. Huzzah. So, yeah, 18.6% strikeout rate for the White Sox. Even, the previous version of Garrett Crochet, the real Garrett Crochet, or maybe this is the real Garrett Crochet, whatever it is, it would have been a less appealing spot than a lot of his other spots already this season, just facing the Astros. They're just good. So, Crochet's off the board. Eric Getty, on the other hand, though, 8,500 on DraftKings is still very cheap for the role that he's been on. And he's having an effective enough season, especially for DFS. A 5.14 ERA is not appealing, but a 4.04 xFIP is just fine. 27.9% strikeout rate is great. 12.3% swinging at 29.9 CSW. It's a very strong year. He's given up some premium contact, 8.6% barrels, 41.4% hard hits, 89.1 miles an hour of exit velo, just 3.24% home runs, though. Nobody's advocating to give him the Cy Young Award, but for our purposes, for 8,500, that's a playable pitcher. At 95, I kind of do prefer some of the other options on FanDuel, but he gains ground again by facing the White Sox. So, happy to get some shares. Last time out, 7 innings, 2 earned runs on 2 hits against the Red Sox at Fenway. Struck out 13. The 2 earned runs came on 2 solo shots. 12 strikeouts, just 1 earned run on 5 hits against the Rays the start before that. 3 earned runs to the Dodgers over 6, struck out 8 in that game. It's a very solid 3-game stretch. Had a 10 strikeout game earlier in the year. Handful of 7s and 8s. Against the worst team in baseball, you could do a lot worse than playing Spencer Arrighetti today. I see no real reason to go to the White Sox against, outside of maybe you could just draw down against a popular pitcher, but you're doing it with by far the worst team available to do that with. Even Lubob is not having a good year. He's hit 12 home runs and stolen 17 bases, and we're very proud of him for that. But he's created runs 21% worse than average. He's got a sub 200 ISO at 192. He's slashing 200, 262, 392. It's been a bad year. 4,300, 3,200. He's very, very cheap. But that's, it's not all that appealing. Nicky Lopez, just a contact hitter at the top. Andrew Benintendi, a contact hitter. He's up to 13 home runs and a 154 ISO. He's salvaged a little bit better of a season than what he was doing earlier in the year, but still very skippable. 75 WRC+. Andrew Vaughn has hit 14 home runs, has a 163 ISO, 5% worse than average creating runs. Gavin Sheets, 8 home runs on the year, a 145 ISO, 6% worse than average creating runs. Corey Lee, 2,200, 2,500, maybe a little bit of appeal given the 10 home runs and 299 chances. 7.8% barrels, 39.9% hard hits, but he's limited, and he hit 6 for the White Sox. Miguel Vargas, Dominic Fletcher, Brooks Baldwin at the bottom of the lineup, a 78, a 58, and a 68 WRC plus this year. If you think those are appealing, well, apparently I'm not allowed to tell people that their opinions are wrong, but you would be wrong about that. Altuve at the top, 54.36. Future Hall of Famer, 298, 349, 435, a 124 WRC plus. Jordan Alvarez, 6,000, 3,900, 25 home runs on the year, a 251 ISO, one of the very best hitters in all of baseball. 304, 395, 555. Lefty, even against a full version of Crochet, wouldn't matter at all for Jordan Alvarez, and in this spot, definitely doesn't matter. Fire away with the Alvarez shares, he's great. Jainer Diaz hitting third today, 4,600, 3,300, one of the more playable catchers on both sides, 298, 324, 447. Creating runs 16% better than average, a 45.6% hard hit rate against just 15.1% strikeouts and 4% walks makes him very appealing given the frequency of well-struck balls from a cheap catcher. Jeremy Pena at 4,400 strikes out just 16.7% of the time, 4.1% walks. A lot of well-struck balls out of him at 38.4% hard hits. 12 home runs and 13 steals, a 107 WRC+, 278, 322, 405 on the year. Victor Caratini, another playable catcher in this lineup. Yeah, big league. 2,900 for Caratini is honestly very affordable. 8.7% barrels and 46.1% hard hits on the season, striking out just 14.7% of the time. In his 150 plate appearances, he's hit 6 home runs already. He's got a 187 ISO. We've talked about him basically every time he's been on a slate, in that he's a switch hitting catcher with a long-time ability to hit the ball very hard while being a fairly low strikeout guy that nobody ever plays. There is definitely appeal in going to Victor Caratini. Jainer Diaz is better. Caratini's cheaper and hits in a similar spot in the lineup. Usually we're talking about Caratini from here or here. Getting him 5th today is interesting. If you were building a Astros stack on FanDuel, it's not the craziest thing in the world, considering that there's no Bregman today, to go those two and then both catchers. That's kind of a unique build that I don't know that a lot of people will be doing, and the $2,500 for Victor Caratini works wonders on those two top-of-the-board prices. You can do worse than that stack if you're building with Astros on FanDuel. Jake Myers, 11 home runs and 9 steals, 92 WRC plus mix and match caliber outfielder. Zach DeZenzo, $2,900 first baseman on DraftKings, $2,500 shortstop on FanDuel. 26 mediocre plate appearances so far, supposed to be able to hit a little bit. Mauricio Dubon, 24-27, prefer him for 27, where he fills 4 positions, just another outfielder for 24 on DK. Chas McCormick at 23-26, more talented than Dubon, but having a worse year, 4 home runs apiece, 7 stolen bases, a 59 WRC plus for him, and 81 WRC plus for Dubon. Neither guy is all that appealing. I'm probably still more inclined to play Chas McCormick on the track record, but the positional flex for Dubon on FanDuel has appeal. Arrighetti, Astros bats, no Crochet, no White Sox. 3 games to go. We're actually making spectacular time at 5:34. One of the more efficient shows we've had. It's Miles Michaelis. It's Justin Robleski. It's disgusting. 5.30 ERA with a 4.26 xFIP on the year from Miles Michaelis. 16.1% strikeouts, and you're going to throw him at the Dodgers? I don't think so. On the other side, Robleski, 18.8% strikeouts in his 4 starts. 4.05 ERA with a 4.85 xFIP. 26.1% CSW. He's given up a ton of barrels and hard hits and exit velo in his first couple outings here. I don't think so. AAA this season, Robleski, 20 2/3 over 4 starts, a 5.23 ERA with a 4.67 xFIP, struck out 29%, which is appealing, but walked 14% in the small sample. In 13 starts at AA this season, 67 2/3, 3.06 ERA with a 3.33 xFIP. Those are clean, but a 23% strikeout rate and 4.8% walk. Seems pretty limited even against the Cardinals. 65... That's where I'm considering it. You know, given how short the DK SP2 slate is, he's there. You know, he's on the board, but I at least prefer Gavin Williams for sure, Simeon Woods Richardson for sure, Aaron Savali for sure. Roderi Munoz is close. That's where your comp is probably. That 100. If you were already going to Munoz and it's like, wow, that $100 buys me Bryce Harper. Nope, not on the slate. Buys me whoever, then sure, it's the same play, but it's not a good one. Dodgers bats, Ohtani, Betts, Freddie, superstars at the top of the lineup. They're stretched back out by virtue of having Mookie Betts back. He fills shortstop and outfield on DK. Second shortstop and outfield on FanDuel. Having him have that second base eligibility is absolutely ideal. 11 home runs and 10 steals in 346 chances. Walk rating runs 55% better than average. Slashing 309, 405, 493. Ohtani at 294, 381, 613 with a 319 ISO. 37 home runs and 35 steals. 6,800, 4,800. It's a high price. It's him and Aaron Judge at the top of the price board for hitters. They're more expensive than some pitchers on DraftKings, but they're absolute elite mashes of the baseball. Freddie Freeman, 40.3% hard hits, leading to 17 home runs, a 200 ISO, a 145 WRC plus in another tremendous season for Freddie. No issues with that play at 53, which is a little bit cheap for him on DK. 55 is probably a better price. 38 on FanDuel seems about right. Teoscar for just 5,000 on DraftKings, 14.5% barrels, 47.5% hard hits, 3,700 on FanDuel. He's got a 10 plus in the home run model. He's got 26 on the season with a 228 ISO. Teoscar's a tremendous power bat, if nothing else. High strikeout, medium walk, but tons and tons of power from the right side. Gavin Lux at the 5 spot, 3,500, 2,700. Decent little price offset, slashing 248, 309, 370 with a 93 WRC plus. 7 home runs over 366 chances. A little bit of cheap upside at second base, but I'd rather just get Mookie at second and get my cheap options from probably a different lineup. Will Smith, 49, 32. Too cheap on DraftKings where you have to play catchers. Too cheap where you don't have to play catchers on FanDuel. 16 home runs, a 113 WRC plus out of the everyday backstop. Miguel Rojas, 35, 24, mix and match caliber, 272, 315, 396, a 100 WRC plus. Kevin Kiermaier and Enrique Hernandez at the bottom of the lineup, having 2 of the worst seasons of their career. Kiermaier still plays a fantastic center field. Enrique Hernandez fills multiple positions as a utility guy. They're not great for DFS right now. On the card side, Mason Winn at 44, 3,000, 9 home runs and 10 steals. Better real-life player than a fantasy contributor right now, but he's effective enough if you're already going to cards against Robleski. You could do worse than plugging him in. That said, not the best way to occupy shortstop. Wilson Contreras, 5,300, 3,400, has 15 home runs, a 223 ISO, a 145 WRC plus. Every bit the catcher that his brother is. Similarly priced, no issues with either one. 14.64 in the home run model, a little bit more power out of this one. Tommy Pham for 36, 31 has 7 home runs, 6 stolen bases, a 106 WRC plus. An effective but low-end season for Tommy Pham. Usually we'd like to see him like mid-teens for home runs and stolen bases, but has the ability in both of those counting stats and on a much better team in a better lineup now. Nolan Arenado, 43-28, slashing 270, 324, 393, just a 103 WRC plus, and most concerningly, just a 122 ISO, 12 home runs, 3.2% barrels, and a 29.8% hard hit rate out of a guy who once upon a time was an elite power hitting third baseman. It's a dramatic drop off. Paul Goldschmidt, 9.8% barrels and 47.7% hard hits, having kind of the opposite problem. He's hit 18 home runs, but he's slashing just 230, 291, 389, has just a 91 WRC plus, and even his ISO at 159 is disappointing for that kind of quality contact. Brendan Donovan, mix and match player at a fair price and multi-position eligible on both sites, creating around 6% better than average. Gets on at an effective 333 clip. He's hitting ahead of Jordan Walker, Pedro Pajes, and Victor Scott, so I don't really know what his on-base percentage is going to be worth to you in this spot. Probably a diminished, their lack of talent at the bottom of the lineup kind of diminishes Donovan in this spot. Less so for the top five. That's impactful for the six-hitter who's just kind of here to reset the table. That's where a guy like Nolan Gorman or somebody comes in handy for having some power and some home run upside from the bottom. Pretty limited options in those last three spots. This goes Dodgers well above the Cardinals. If you're wild about either pitcher, I would take Robleski 100 times out of 100 against the Cards over Michaelis. That said, Michaelis is definitely the more likely to give you 6 innings. I just don't think they're going to be 6 good innings. Hasn't made it out of the 4th in either of his last 2 starts. Those were against the Royals and the Cubs, who are not as good as the Dodgers. Difficult spot to recommend for Miles Michaelis. That's DK only, by the way. There's no reason in the world to play either one of these pitchers on FanDuel. Pods and the Rocks. Doesn't look like either one of these lineups are in either. You're not going to either one of these pitchers. Matt Waldron I'll at least talk about real quick, considering that he was effective in that 6-inning outing at the beginning of the season. I think it was late mid-April in Coors Field when we were concerned about how the Knuckler would perform. He's got a 4.0 ERA on the season, a 4.31 xFIP, a 22% strikeout rate, over 132 2/3, 24 starts. Does eat innings, including in Coors Field. So if you're just looking for 6 or 7 clean innings with a handful of strikeouts, you might be able to get there. I just wish he was like 72 or like 68 on DraftKings. 78 is a little bit more challenging. I think he's on the board, but he's not the most appealing as far as those bargain bin pitchers. I have no real reason to talk about Cal Quantrill. Maybe he eats innings for you, but with the Padres in town and their ability to just put bat on ball and base hit him to death, like they line up perfectly against his downside. So don't like the spot at all for Cal Quantrill. Don't think he's worth your 58 and certainly not worth your 73 on FanDuel. Luis Arraez is one of those guys at the top of the lineup that could easily ruin Cal Quantrill's day in a hurry. 17.4% strikeout rate for the pitcher against his 5.1% strikeout rate. 3.5% walk rate against the 9.1% walk rate. Maybe he walks Arraez a few times. Either way, Arraez is still getting to first base a few times today. 339 on base. Looks like a good way to start off a Padres stack at 4,700. I prefer him at second base, even for 34 on FanDuel. First base, not an ideal position for him on DraftKings, but playable. 54 4,000 is uncomfortably high price for Jurickson Profar, but it is Coors Field. He is having a very, very good season at 150 WRC+. 186 ISO is not bad. 19 home runs is good. He's been very low strikeout at 14.3%, drawing a bunch of walks, hitting the ball hard. There's nothing to dislike about the output so far. I just question the actual level of the talent, but it's basically a full season of quality at this point this year. So fire away with your Profar. He'll be very popular in a very popular lineup. Cronenworth, 52-35, second base eligible on both sites, which is where I'd want to stick him. 15 home runs, a 163 ISO, a 109 WRC+. A middle-of-the-board kind of a player, getting a bump from Coors Field here. He's fine. Manny Machado, 56-37, 18 home runs, a 174 ISO, a 113 WRC+. In a down season for Manny, those are still good numbers. In a total vacuum, 10.1% barrels and 48.1% hard hits are still very, very good and reminiscent of the hitter that he's been. It's just lacking a little bit of output rather than actual quality of what he's doing at the plate. So no reason to go away from Manny at Coors Field. A cheap Xander Bogaerts at second base for 4,800. 3,500 is more correct for him at Coors on the FanDuel slate. Shortstop eligibility to boot. 5 home runs, 6 stolen bases. 0.97, 097 ISO, 93 WRC+, a limited 308 plate appearances from Xander Bogaerts, but this is a player we've got a long track record of success with, and he's better than the numbers he's put up this year. Jackson Merrill, tremendous rookie season, 288, 321, 481, 17 homers, 13 steals, a 192 ISO, creating runs 24% better than average, 9.9% barrels, 43.6% hard hits. Premium option at 51.39 in this ballpark. 51 is probably too cheap on DraftKings. Peralta, 34.33 across sites. Easy to play, but not an overly appealing bat. 44.8% hard hit, 6.9% barrels. Probably going to be lower owned than a lot of his teammates here, and also gets the ballpark bump. 118 WRC plus in his 162 chances. Ha-Sung Kim over 460 plate appearances. Pretty disappointing season. 10 home runs, 22 steals is fine. Just a 98 WRC plus. Limited for premium contact, limited for power, limited for a lot of things that he is supposed to do well. 47.33. You can do a lot worse on price than rostering him at Coors, though. And then there's Higgy and all his barrels. 12.7% barrels, 14 home runs and 183 plate appearances that we've talked about at length so far this season. 288 ISO from him. Premium power bat late in the lineup. People might think that it's odd output. I just think it's realistic for the contact he's always made and for just getting extended and consecutive opportunities. Rockies, always underrated at Coors Field. They get the benefit of the ballpark as much as the other team does. Facing a funky pitcher with the knuckler on the mound. Not an appealing day to go to the Rockies, but they're on the board as one of the value teams. I think you could maybe get there. They're not crazy cheap on either side, but they're a little bit cheaper, obviously, than their opponents. They're playable from the mid-range. Charlie at the top of the lineup, 323 on base, just an 87 WRC plus, mix and match caliber outfielder. Tovar for 54-34, having a good year for those prices, 19 home runs on the season, a 188 ISO, 5% below average for run creation. Part of that probably is because of the 296 on base percentage. 28.5% strikeouts is not great, needs to draw walks if he's going to be striking out at that level. But when he hits the ball, he's been pretty good and pretty effective for the money at short this year. Brenton Doyle, 58-36, 20 home runs, 23 steals, a 201 ISO, a 105 WRC plus. Pretty tremendous option from the 3 spot going up against Waldron here. He's not cheap by any means, but he's been producing at levels commensurate with those prices in Coors Field. So I really have no issues paying a full price, and you get a bit of a discount for Coors for everybody else, basically. 49.34 for Ryan McMahon, especially on DraftKings. That's pretty cheap for McMahon. Even knowing that we're dealing with just like the Ryan McMahon that we've known for the handful of seasons he's been in the league. 248, 339, 417, 16 home runs, making very good contact. 11.7% barrels is about normalized to his previous numbers. 50% hard hits is up a few points over the last couple seasons, but he's been maintaining around that level. 99 WRC plus. He cooled off dramatically after an outrageously good start. But in Colorado, he's always going to be playable. Brendan Rodgers, 45.1% hard hits to focus on, slashing 280, 326, 416. Creating runs 6% worse than average, just 9 home runs, but that's an effective enough slash line for a cheap second baseman. That's easy to put into a lineup if you're stacking Rockies. Michael Talia for just 4,500 on DraftKings, just 3,200 with first and outfield eligibility on FanDuel, leads the team at 10.75 in the home run model. We're at 19 home runs in 293 plate appearances this season, 268 ISO. The kid is an absolutely outrageously good power bat. 31.4% strikeouts is a lot of 0 days out of Talia, but there's premium power here. 17.4% barrels, 51.2% hard hits. Cave, Stallings, and Hilliard down the lineup. Hilliard is my favorite out of those options, especially for just 37 on a day where people will not play him all that frequently. Makes great contact and always has. Look back over these limited samples over the last couple of seasons, but in the show, made very good 48.7% hard hit rate contact. 50% this year and 14% barrels in his 84 plate appearances. He's hit 4 home runs and stolen 4 bases. He's got a 222 ISO. That is an effective bat for a very fair price on DraftKings. 33 on FanDuel is just correct and probably expensive considering he's probably hitting 9th. If you ever got Hilliard climbing the lineup a little bit, that's a player to focus on. That's an interesting bat, most specifically over here. Stallings, mix and match quality catcher, and J. Cave, mix and match in the outfield. Padres bats above the Rockies bats, but both sides of this are definitely in play against these pitchers. If you have to roster a pitcher from this game, it's Waldron, but even that is kind of uncomfortable. And it's only on DraftKings. Last game up, coming up on 10-6. As a reminder, your 13-game FanDuel slate starts at 6:40. Your 8-game DraftKings slate starts at 7:05. In all the talk that we've done, or I've done anyway, about the diminishment from the Braves with Acuna being out all year, and then losing Ozzy Albies, struggling as he was more recently in that spot at second base, I'd completely forgotten about Michael Harris. He's made 287 plate appearances, but he was absent from this team for a decent stretch there. Dropped back into the lineup the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, that was a third player that they were missing from their high quality cupboard. If he's in the leadoff spot here, going up against Jose Soriano, he's definitely appealing at 3,800 on DraftKings. 31 is more correct on FanDuel, but he could be more expensive. He's hit 6 home runs, he's stolen 8 bases, just a 115 ISO and an 81 WRC plus over his 287 plate appearances. Last year, he had a 184 ISO and a 115 WRC plus, hit 18 homers, stole 20 bags, 19 homers, 20 stolen bases the year before, had a 217 ISO and a 136 WRC plus. So there's a lot of DFS talent, especially if he's leading off for those prices, and most particularly on DK. I skipped over talking about the pitchers at all, but whatever. We'll talk about the lineups first to end the show. Austin Riley at 53-35, 19 home runs on the year, 210 ISO, has pulled his season together, was really underperforming the first half. 263, 25, 470 is fine, creating runs 19% better than average, and still making just fantastic contact, 14.9%, barrels 53.5% hard hits, 10 plus in the home run model, a lot of appeal there for the third baseman. 59-38 for Ozuna, 15 in the home run model on 17.6% barrels and 54.8% hard hits this year. 35 homers, a 281 ISO, 159 WRC plus. It's been tremendous all season. 11.7% barrels and 47% hard hits from Matt Olson is diminished, but on its own, those are very, very good numbers, and there's a lot of appeal going to that contact, just erasing, the name brand and the previous seasons. That's very good. 21 home runs over 509 plate appearances is not bad. 197 ISO is not bad. It's just Matt Olson, we expect more. But that's why he costs just $5,000, $3,300 across sites. If he wasn't diminished somewhat in his output, we would be paying a lot more for him. Totally happy getting some Matt Olson shares in my lineup. Orlando Arcia, mix and match caliber shortstop at 34-26 across sites. 11 home runs, but pretty bad on the season, 72 WRC plus. Sean Murphy, tons of catcher power. If it's Travis d'Arnaud, you get the exact same catcher power out of that. 7 home runs on the season for Murph with a 174 ISO and 174 plate appearances, and he's cheap. 3,900 where you have to play catchers, 27 where you don't. Jared Kelenic, a lot of strikeouts at 29.8%. You also have Ramon Laureano in this projected at 34.9. A lot of Ks to end the lineup. Could feed some upside for Jose Soriano, but he's only got a 20.4% strikeout rate on the season, so limited. Mix and match quality out of Kelenic, mix and match quality out of Laureano, who still hits the ball pretty hard, 12.9% barrels and 40.9% hard hits. It's only amounted to 5 home runs and a 153 ISO over 166 chances, but maybe you can pick off a little bit of cheap power down lineup. Kelenic also hits the ball hard, but inconsistently, 288 on base and a 29.8% strikeout, but 9.4% barrels, 44.3% hard hits, 13 homers on the season. And then Whit Merrifield is just low strikeout, but hasn't really done anything noteworthy this year. If you're going to the Angels, you're drawing against Spencer Schwellenbach instead of Soriano. Between the two pitchers, I'd rather face Soriano in his 20.4% strikeouts than 9.3% walks. He does have a very solid 3.36 ERA, and a 3.82 xFIP is even not all that bad, considering the low output and the bad output there, the limited quality of strike throwing, the 44.2% hard hits, and 90.1 miles an hour. 90.1 miles an hour of exit velo, which don't really matter because it comes on a negative 0.7 degree average launch. So very, very, very good at limiting home run power. You do still have 2 guys that are outrageously good home run hitters above the magic number, and Matt Olson not far behind. But that's what Jose Soriano does well. That's why this ERA is this low. The 3.82 xFIP doesn't include the effectiveness against home runs, but it's a good number. But he's limited in his appeal given the lack of strikeouts. Where he could find some upside is that the Braves have a 24.6% strikeout rate that is pushed up by some of those late lineup hitters. But even their good bats, Ozuna, 25.3% strikeouts, Olson, 27.7, Riley, 24.9. So there are some Ks available for Soriano. 8,400, 8,700, I don't think he's necessarily correctly priced for the big downside that he also comes with. But maybe it is a good matchup for him, considering, when you're rostering Braves, you know that they're largely home run or bust. the average on base percentage for this team. They're not a bunch of sequencers. They're not a bunch of correlated scorers. Average on base, including the 370 that we're getting out of Ozuna, is 306 for this team. You drop Ozuna out, you're at 298. So take their home runs away, maybe you could get away with Soriano. Like it better at 84 on DraftKings than 87 on FanDuel. Schwellenbach is appealing at the high end on both sides. 3.95 ERA against a much better 3.22 xFIP. Very strong 26.8% strikeout rate over 70 and 2/3 in 12 starts. 4.2% walk rate, a 14% swinging strike rate, and 30.6% CSW. These are star caliber numbers. This is elite. This is very good. This is bumpy, below average stuff plus rating. He's given up some home runs. He's made some mistakes. He's had a couple bumpy outings, but pretty clear sailing against an Angels squad that is non-threatening overall. Last time out at Coors Field, he went 6 innings, gave up 2 earned, 7 strikeouts, walked 2. No problems there, and that's a Coors Field start. 10 Ks against the Marlins. In a start before that, 3 earned runs on 6 hits allowed, including 2 of those home runs. 11 strikeouts against the Mets in a shutout 7-inning performance, just 2 hits allowed, no walks. 8 strikeouts and no walks, but gave up 3 home runs and 4 earned on 7 hits to the Cardinals. So that's 5 home runs in just two games, 2 out of his last 4 games. And then he had a 2 home run game against Pittsburgh earlier in the year. So that the home run output for Schwellenbach here at 3.14, just a little minor blip. Even that's not a bad number at 3.14, but I do think it's representative of a little bit of a blip. I think he's even better than that. So 98, no problem paying that on DraftKings. 97, if I can get there on FanDuel, happy to have it. And then to round things out, we'll talk about the Angels bats. 339 on base out of them, a 101 WRC+, 12 home runs over 467 chances. An effective bat-on-ball hitter who is more likely to ultimately amount to just on-base, correlated scoring, put-the-ball-in-play type. But he's been effective enough for that, given the 339 on base, and he's found some home run output. So from the left side, you could do worse than starting a lineup with Shanuel, but he's not a reason to go rush off and roster the Angels. Zach Neto, 43-34, much more appealing on DraftKings than FanDuel. This is probably the more correct price, though. 17 home runs, 22 steals, a 197 ISO. He's created runs 21% better than average. Neto is quietly having a very strong season. I just don't love occupying shortstop with him, and especially, maybe if it's a one-off for this cheap DraftKings price at the position. Not at the FanDuel price. You can get a star caliber shortstop in a much better lineup for 34. Logan O'Hoppe at 45. Maybe you can put those two guys together and occupy just 2 key positions for 43 and 45 on DraftKings. And you can do worse than O'Hoppe at catcher. 11.1% barrels, 46.6% hard hits, 16 home runs, a 172 ISO, 107 WRC+. Kevin Pillar has 7 home runs and 9 steals, a 164 ISO, and a 105 WRC+. Effective enough righty bat, moderately priced. Not a star, not a terrible option either in the middle of the lineup. Taylor Ward, a little better than that for a cheaper price, 4,280 across sites, 16 home runs, and he's been diminished over the last, let's say, 2 months or so, but probably a better hitter overall than Kevin Pillar and definitely makes better premium contact. 12.8% barrel, so basically 3 times the barrel rate and a significantly higher hard hit rate. Anthony Rendon, if he's in the lineup, he won't be in mine. He doesn't care about playing baseball. I don't care about playing him. Mickey Moniak, 2,700, 2,800 across sites, 8 homers and 6 steals, 70 WRC+. Brandon Drury, worst season of his career. Joe Adell, mix and match caliber outfielder with some counting stat upside, 18 homers and 14 steals at the bottom of the Angels lineup, which is not exactly where you go for DFS success, more often than not. That's your slate, gang. I can't believe the time we made. I guess I started talking fast and ignoring chat for a while there. Stephen Leibowitz saying no power from Bogarts, less appeal on DraftKings. I'm lefty heavy on the pods. Quantrill 1.9 home run per 9 versus lefties at home this season. That's noteworthy. And hey, lefties from the pods gets you to some quality bats there. Right, we're getting to we're getting to a Rise. We're getting presumably Jackson Merrill in that lineup. Jake Cronenworth is all right. You get Profar as a switch hitting option, and then your 2 quote unquote stars are both righties, but presumably I would say Manny's probably in that lineup if not Bogey. But yeah, I like the look of the pods today. They're just going to be popular, as Coors Field usually is. we're dealing with some popular spots there. So last look at the messy pitching board. Again, you're deeper on FanDuel by a lot. You've got a very appreciably good top end here. Paul Skeens, dynamite if you can afford him at 11-2. Garrett Cole facing the Tigers at 98. Very, very appealing. You get Sean Manaea at 93 with a lot of appeal against Miami. He's your top-end DraftKings pitcher at just 87 in that matchup. Looks pretty terrific. Feel like he's going to be pretty popular on DK. Logan Gilbert benefits greatly from facing Pittsburgh, but he's also an elite pitcher. 10-5 is not an incorrect price in that matchup. That said, compared to the rest of the board with some very appealing spots as well, it's a little bit more difficult to reach. It probably renders him lower owned than he should be against Pittsburgh on a more shallow pitching slate. Aaron Nola against Washington, the same could be said there. A lot of upside, a lot of appeal, but maybe boxed out by some of these shares up here. That said, if he's under-owned against the Nationals, there's a lot of reason to go to Aaron Nola in that spot for DFS purposes, angle in against the slate with a tremendous pitcher. Corbin Burns at 10,000, same thing on the FanDuel slate, with the additional downside of having to face the Red Sox, the best of the top 6 teams here. These 5 guys are all facing way worse teams than the Boston Red Sox. So Burns has his work cut out for him, but definitely takes a lot of the upside away from the Red Sox lineup with his ability to limit power, induce weak and medium contact. 97 on DraftKings, not an incorrect price. I do love the idea of pairing Manaea and Spencer Arrighetti in the next spot down for 87, 85, but I think you're correct in mixing in those 2 pitchers plus Burns and Schwellenbach as your top-end 4 options on DraftKings. Arrighetti's on an absolute tear and facing the worst team in baseball for just 8,500. That makes a ton of sense, and he's having just a very good year. It's not just about those couple of recent starts. He would have been talked about almost as enthusiastically in this spot for that price on that DraftKings slate. 95 is challenging on FanDuel. You got to have some faith when I can get the other options for similar or cheaper prices, but I think similarly it might render him a little bit lower owned than he otherwise would have been. The fact that he has so much buzz right now, though, probably does push some public ownership in his direction on FanDuel, so just be aware of that. Love Schwelly at 97, 98 across sites. I think he's totally justifiably the highest priced pitcher on the DraftKings board today. Super appealing there if people go away from him because of the high price, which they're not really doing, but he could be higher owned than that. And if people go away from him for any reason, fire it up. They're very appealing. Ryan Pepio, good option on FanDuel at the offset price at just 82. Enough talent to beat that diminished version of that Diamondbacks lineup. They are effectively low strikeout, but he's got the talent to find a few Ks, and that is a dramatic price offset. So that's looking very appealing to me. You get Ryan Nelson on the other side if you're a bit more of a risk taker. He's got more strikeout upside, so probably a little bit bigger of a ceiling for Ryan Nelson than Ryan Pepio on either side of that game. In between the two, Garrett Crochet just not on the board because he's not going to pitch enough, and he's frankly been pretty bad. He's facing an elite Astros lineup. Gav Williams, definitely your lead option in the bargain bin on DraftKings for just 66. Facing a really challenging Brewers lineup, Simeon Woods Richardson for 69 is facing a very challenging Rangers lineup. Those are your 2 top bargain pitchers on DraftKings, though. At 8,000 to 8,100 on FanDuel, you can play them, you can leave them on the board. You don't necessarily need to go to them. They're going to be popular here. They're probably not going to be as popular there. But keep in mind, you're drawing against 2 tough teams, so I'd rather have Nelson against the Rays. I'd probably rather have Pepio against the Diamondbacks for a similar price. Heaney against Minnesota is debatable, but he is cheaper, so there's appeal there, and he does have more strikeout ability. So this is a different play here than it is here. Very appealing here. Heaney, again, 78, 74, not mispriced and could come with some strikeout upside against Minnesota, but there's a big, big basement. There's a lot of premium contact still, and there's some decent home run hitters in that Twins lineup. So just know that you're going to be challenged a little bit for the Heaney shares, but those aren't bad prices for his ceiling. Soriano, just potentially limited against the Braves. I don't love him at price. Fairly low strikeout pitcher. May get a bump in strikeout ceiling from the Braves lineup. That's why he projects where he does. If nothing else, though, he is very good at taking the home run potential away from against the Braves. And as we looked at, if you take away the Marcell Ozuna high on base, the Braves, the rest of that 8-man lineup is below a 300 on base percentage. So they're not going to sequence against. So maybe it's a sneaky enough play. It's just I wish he was cheaper is probably the thing. Savali 77 is kind of a no on FanDuel, but at 68 he's definitely more on the boarding on DraftKings. Your 3rd man into that bargain bin, or 4th if you consider Heaney. Not an appealing matchup in any way against Cleveland. There's decent power in that lineup. They're very low strikeout. Savali's just good enough to justify it at that 68. Having a bad season, though. Probably not going to be as popular as he could be. Waldron, just borderline playable, but not a good price comparative to the rest of the guys on this tier. And like I said, on DraftKings, it's very clear cut. You have this tier and you have this tier. Crochet's not a part of it. These guys, not really a part of it. So it's very, very straightforward on DraftKings. I do think you could benefit by saying at least a couple of crunches, allowing the ability for these two guys to be paired together, and then maybe creating some crunches where it's a lot of these guys being paired together and you're just saving an absolute ton of money. And then obviously these guys and these guys pair together well for the discount, and Burns and Schwelly are just the top of the board. Nick Martinez is a pretty hard no against Kansas City for me at 84 on FanDuel. I see no appeal. Roderi Munoz, pretty thin against the Mets. You could maybe throw him into this mix if you're desperate, but he's really low end. Same thing with Robleski against the Cards at 65 and Michaelis at 64. Very, very low end. These three pitchers stretch this tier a lot more. So I like this group of pitchers a lot better than either of those, but maybe they're a little bit playable on DraftKings just because you're short on options over there. They're all going to be very low owned. They're all in bad matchups, and they're all bad pitchers. Martinez, no there. Herder's a no on FanDuel, even at 6,000, just facing the Yankees and low-end option. Lorenzen against the Reds in that ballpark is a no. These guys are no's on FanDuel. Everybody down here is a no. Cal Quantrill, I see no appeal in targeting the Padres. Chris Well only giving us like 3 or 4 innings, and he's facing Baltimore. Michaelis against the Dodgers for FanDuel is a no. Again, for DraftKings, you can mix them in if you want to. Same thing with Robleski. Hard nose. The FanDuel cut line is like... I mean, if we're talking realistically, it's probably like here. You can mix your way through these guys, but it's a lot less necessary. If you're building 150 lineups, obviously you take some positions in here and just look at the public ownership. All those plays are essentially the same. DK, your cut line's obviously a lot deeper, but there's fewer pitchers involved. Travis Duarte calling the Skeens, Arizona, and Philly stack lineup for the win. I like that. Sounds pretty appealing. Top of the home run board, Mr. Judge, 18.40. He is undeniable. He is inevitable, like Thanos, who ultimately lost in the end, but he was winning for quite a while. Avengers had to kind of cheat to beat Thanos in that one. Royce Lewis, if you don't like the Judge play from that Minnesota lineup, not a bad option either, up at 17.8. Phillies, super appealing on your FanDuel slate. Phillies and the Yanks, I think, are both only on FanDuel. So really, really a lot of your top of your home run board here is FanDuel exclusive today. No fault of my own, but that's how it landed. The Guardians seem worth considering with all of Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, and Big Christmas above the home run mark. Definitely some appeal for the Guardians. Might be a little bit of a sneakier stack. Michael Talia on the Colorado side of that Coors Field game, kind of appealing. And then Mark Vientos, again, is just too cheap. Too cheap. Get some Mark Vientos in your lives if you're going to the Mets. Even if you're not, consider him as a strong one-off with a lot of power upside. I've run out of things to talk about. It is 6:07. We've got 6:40 start time. So let me punch out of this one, guys, and we'll get the site updated. Hit the like button. I didn't talk about any of our stuff. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. If you dislike today's show for political reasons, don't hit the like button. Hope you come back on Monday. I am not inclined to talk about politics at all, and hope we don't ever have to do it again. But obviously a little bit of Discord in the chat today. If you want less conflict, jump into our actual Discord. Oddly, there's a lot less conflict in there. But yeah, check out our Discord. Check out our guys over at acemind.io as well. Those guys do a tremendous job for optimization for sim needs. Promo code rotoscouts all in caps over there gets you 20% off your first month. So give those guys a look. Heading into football season, basketball season not far away. That's going to be pretty key for us. Otherwise, that's about it. We're heading into the weekend. Happy Friday, everybody. And I do mean everybody. Good luck to everybody. Somebody out there go win something tonight. We will be back on Monday, and I hope you guys all come back to join me. You guys absolutely rock, despite some incorrect opinions out there. So that's it. Have great weekends. See you guys.